Hello friends. Did you know that nearly 80% of those who watch my videos aren't subscribed? If you enjoy the content, I'd truly appreciate it if you hit that subscribe button. It helps a lot. Also, don't forget to leave a like and share your thoughts in the comments. Your interaction not only supports the channel's growth, but also helps these stories reach more people. Thank you all for being here. By the way, where are you watching from? Let me know in the comments. The file arrived on my desk one Tuesday morning in March, 16 years after the date it should have been closed forever. By that time, I had been working for the FBI for 11 years, spending most of that time at the Anchorage field office dealing with routine fraud cases and occasional missing person reports that resulted in bodies being pulled from the Nick River or drunk tourists sleeping in someone's cabin. Incidents in Alaska were not the same as those my colleagues dealt with in the 48 states. Here, people didn't get lost in crowds, but in the vast wilderness. The wild swallowed them whole, and sometimes we couldn't even find a boat. The file was thin, perhaps 40 pages of faded reports and yellowed photographs. Someone had stuck a yellow sticky note on the front page. Reopen upon request. Evidence found. There was no signature, no explanation of what evidence had been found or who had requested it. I opened the file. The photograph stapled to the first page showed a man in his early 40s, thin-faced with wire-rimmed glasses, and the kind of smile that suggested he spent more time with rocks than people. Dr. Marcus Halverson had been a geologist from the University of Washington, contracted by a mining survey company to assess mineral deposits in the remote interior. He'd gone into Grafton Ridge in early October with 3 weeks of supplies, a satellite phone, and a detailed itinerary. He was supposed to check in every 72 hours. After the first missed check-in, the company waited. After the second, they notified local rangers. By the third week, when a bush pilot finally managed to land near his camp during a break in the weather, Halverson was gone. The original investigation had been handled by Alaska State Troopers with minimal Bureau involvement. The file contained their reports: camp found intact, tent sealed, sleeping bags still rolled out, food supplies barely touched. His equipment was organized, his notes were current. The last entry in his field journal was dated October 11th at 2100 hours, 9 p.m. It read, "Samples collected, weather turning, should be clear by morning." There was no morning for Marcus Halverson. No body was ever recovered. No tracks led away from the camp except his own boot prints circling the immediate area, which the troopers noted seemed to stop and start in strange patterns, as if he'd been pacing, searching for something. The prevailing theory was that he'd wandered off in the night, perhaps disoriented by hypothermia or a head injury, and succumbed to the elements somewhere in the endless spruce forest that surrounded Grafton Ridge. Case closed. File stamped. Presumed dead. Until now. I read through the reports again, looking for the detail that would explain why someone wanted this reopened. The evidence log was sparse. Personal effects returned to family, camp gear donated, field samples turned over to the survey company. At the bottom of the list, someone had scribbled in pen, "Camera, storage." That was new? I checked the timestamp on the yellow note. It had been placed there 2 days ago, which meant someone in the building had pulled this from deep storage recently. I picked up my phone and dialed down to evidence. "Ramirez. It's Agent Wyatt. I need to know about a piece of evidence from a 1998 case." "Jesus, Wyatt, how far back we going?" "Case number AK 1998-4471. There should be a camera." I heard typing, then a long pause. "Yeah, we got it. Logged in last week. Some state trooper from Fairbanks sent it over with a note saying it was found during a property clear-out. Belonged to Halverson's mother, apparently. She died last month, and when they were cleaning her house, they found a box of his stuff in the attic. Camera was in there. Has anyone looked at it?" Not my department. You want it brought up? Yeah, my office. Today if you can. An hour later, Ramirez appeared with a plastic evidence bag containing a Canon AE-1, the kind of film camera that outdoor researchers used before digital took over. The body was scuffed and the lens had a crack, but otherwise it looked functional. There was still film inside. Kodak 400, half exposed. "You're going to develop this?" Ramirez asked. "That's the idea. Might be nothing. Could have sat in that attic for 16 years, probably degraded. Or it might tell us what happened to Halverson." He shrugged and left. I sat there for a long time, turning the camera over in my hands. It felt heavier than it should have, as if those undeveloped frames carried weight beyond their chemical composition. I thought about Marcus Halverson pacing around his camp in the dark, taking pictures of something he thought was important enough to document. What had he seen? By late afternoon, I'd sent the film to our lab in Quantico with a rush order. Then I started making calls. The first was to the mining survey company which had dissolved in 2003 following bankruptcy. The second was to the University of Washington, where a helpful administrator informed me that Halverson's research notes had been archived but were available for review. The third call was to Alaska State Troopers. Grafton Ridge, the dispatcher sounded uncertain. "You mean near the old mining settlement?" "That's the one." "Nobody goes out there anymore. Road washed out years ago. You'd need a float plane or a hell of a hike. Anyone still living in the area?" "Maybe a dozen people, if that. Mostly trappers and folks who don't like company." "You planning a trip?" "Possibly." She gave me the contact information for a local ranger station and wished me luck in a tone that suggested I'd need it. I hung up and pulled up satellite imagery of Grafton Ridge on my computer. The settlement wasn't much, just a cluster of buildings along a muddy track that used to be a road. The forest pressed in from all sides, dense and impenetrable, broken only by the occasional clearing or frozen stream. Halverson's camp had been about 4 miles northwest of the settlement, accessible only by foot or ATV. The photos from 1998 showed the camp exactly as the troopers had described. A small orange tent pitched on level ground, a ring of stones for a fire, and equipment stored neatly under a tarp. Everything in order. Everything except the man who'd set it up. I zoomed in on one of the photos. Something about it bothered me, though I couldn't say what. The angle was wrong, maybe, or the shadows fell in a way that didn't quite make sense. I stared at it until my eyes burned, then closed the file. 3 days later, Quantico called. "Agent Wyatt, this is Forensic Tech Delgado. We finished processing that film you sent." "And?" A pause. "You're going to want to see these in person. Just tell me what's on them." Another pause, longer this time. I don't know how to describe it. The first dozen frames are standard field documentation, rock samples, geological formations, that sort of thing. But the last 3... She trailed off. "What about the last 3? "They're dark, almost completely black. But when we enhanced them digitally, we found something." "Found what?" "I think you should come down here." "I'm in Alaska. Just send me the files." "Agent Wyatt, I really think..." "Send them." She did. I opened the email on my phone 20 minutes later. The first images were exactly as she'd described. Close-ups of rock faces, wide shots of the surrounding terrain, Halverson's gloved hands holding samples. Professional documentation, nothing unusual. Then came frame 24. The image was grainy, underexposed, shot in near total darkness. At first, I thought it was blank, just an accidental exposure. But when I zoomed in, I saw it. A shape in the distance, pale and indistinct, standing among the trees. It might have been a person. It might have been something else. The resolution was too poor to tell. Frame 25 showed the same scene, but closer. The shape had moved, or Halverson had moved toward it. Either way, the distance between the camera and whatever was in the trees had halved. I could make out vertical lines that might have been a human form, but the proportions seemed off. Too tall. Too thin. Frame 26 made my stomach tighten. The shape filled most of the frame now, close enough that I could see details. Something that might have been a face, though it was tilted at an unnatural angle. The background was nothing but black trees and darker shadows, but in the foreground, illuminated by what must have been Halverson's flashlight, was a hand. Not his hand. This hand was pressed against the camera lens, fingers splayed as if trying to block the shot or reach through the glass. The skin looked wrong, too pale, almost luminous in the flash. And the fingers were too long, the joints bending in places that didn't match human anatomy. I stared at the image until my phone screen dimmed, then I forced myself to look away. My hands were shaking. I called Delgado back. "You enhanced these?" "As much as we could without destroying the integrity." "Why?" "The last frame. That hand, you see it?" "Yeah." Her voice was quiet. "We all saw it." "What do you think it is?" "Honestly, I have no idea. Could be a double exposure. Could be damage to the negative. Could be someone wearing gloves with the fingers extended. But what? But the metadata checks out. The frames are sequential. And whatever was in front of that camera, Halverson photographed it less than 12 hours before he disappeared. I thanked her and ended the call. For a long time I sat in my office, the phone in one hand and the case file in the other, trying to reconcile what I'd just seen with 16 years of official conclusions. Marcus Halverson hadn't wandered off. He hadn't gotten disoriented. He'd been taking pictures of something in the dark, something that got close enough to touch his camera, and then he was gone. The next morning, I requested authorization to reopen the investigation. My supervisor, a woman named Karen Ortiz, who'd been with the Bureau longer than I'd been alive, read through my summary and frowned. "You're basing this on 3 degraded photographs?" "I'm basing it on the fact that a missing person's case has new evidence." "Evidence of what? A blurry shape in the woods?" "Evidence that Marcus Halverson was not alone in that camp before he disappeared." She looked at me over her reading glasses. "Wyatt, you know how these things go. Some hiker wanders off, gets hurt, dies of exposure. Happens every year. The family wants closure, so they invent scenarios, Bigfoot, aliens, government conspiracies, but 99% of the time, it's just bad luck and bad weather. Then let me go up there and confirm it. 1 week. If I don't find anything, we close the case for good." Ortiz sighed. "You really want to fly out to the middle of nowhere in March to chase a 16-year-old ghost?" "Yes." She stamped the authorization form. "Fine, but take someone with you. I don't want another missing agent on my hands." 2 days later, I was on a float plane heading northwest from Anchorage with a partner named Cole Briggs, a younger agent who'd transferred from Juneau 6 months earlier. Briggs was competent, quiet, and didn't ask too many questions, which made him perfect for this kind of trip. As we flew over endless miles of snow-covered wilderness, I briefed him on the case. "So, we're looking for a geologist who disappeared 16 years ago?" he asked, shouting over the engine noise. "We're looking for whatever he photographed before he disappeared." "Which was?" I showed him the enhanced images on my tablet. He studied them for a long time, his expression unreadable, then handed it back. "That's not a bear," he said. "No. And it's not a person. Probably not. So, what are we dealing with?" I looked out the window at the landscape below. frozen rivers, skeletal trees, mountains that scraped the belly of low clouds. "I don't know," I said. "But whatever it is, it's still out there." The pilot banked left, descending toward a small lake surrounded by forest. In the distance, barely visible through the haze, I could see the dark smudge of buildings that marked Grafton Ridge. We were going in. The float plane touched down on a lake called Kettle Pond, about 3 miles southeast of Grafton Ridge, sending up plumes of icy water that froze in the air before falling back as sleet. The pilot, a grizzled man named Tom, who claimed to have been flying Alaska routes for 30 years, killed the engine and let us drift toward the shoreline. "I'll be back in 6 days," he said, not looking at us. "Same time, same place. If you're not here, I wait 30 minutes, then I leave." "We'll be here," I said. "They all say that." He finally turned to face us. "You know what happened to the last fellow who came out here, right? The one you're looking for?" "That's why we're here." Tom shook his head. "Whatever you think you're going to find, you won't. This place doesn't give up its dead." He paused. "And sometimes it doesn't let the living leave either." Briggs and I unloaded our gear: 2 large backpacks, a portable tent, cold weather equipment, satellite phone, GPS unit, and enough rations for 8 days if we stretched them. As we waded through the shallows toward dry ground, I heard the plane's engine cough back to life. By the time we'd shouldered our packs, Tom was already lifting off, the floats leaving long wakes in the dark water. Then he was gone, and the silence closed in. Alaska has a particular kind of quiet that people from the lower 48 don't understand. It's not peaceful. It's the absence of everything familiar. No source, no voices, no hum of electricity or distant music. Just wind through trees and the occasional crack of ice adjusting to temperature shifts. The kind of silence that makes you aware of your own heartbeat. We started walking. The trail to Grafton Ridge was barely visible, overgrown with willow and alder. The ground soft with decades of decomposing needles. Our boots sank with each step, and within 20 minutes my calves were burning. Briggs moved ahead of me, his breath coming out in white clouds, his hand resting on the service weapon holstered at his side. "How far?" he asked. 3 miles, maybe less if we cut through the valley. "And people actually lived out here?" "Used to. Mining boom in the 20s, went bust by the 50s. Most folks cleared out. The ones who stayed." I gestured at the forest around us. "They're the type who want to be left alone." We walked in silence for another hour, stopping only to check our GPS and take water. The forest grew denser as we descended into a shallow valley, the spruce trees so tall and close together that the afternoon light barely penetrated. Everything was gray and shadow. That's when I saw the first marker. It was nailed to a tree about chest height, a wooden board with faded red paint forming crude letters. "Private property. Keep out." Below it, someone had added in fresher paint, "They watch friendly locals," Briggs muttered. "Note the they, not we," I said. He looked at me. "You think they're talking about us, the Bureau?" "I think they're talking about whatever Halverson photographed." We continued. More markers appeared as we got closer to the settlement, each one more unsettling than the last. Some were official-looking, the kind Forest Service might put up, warning about unstable terrain or dangerous wildlife. But others were handmade, nailed to trees or propped against rocks, with messages scrawled in paint or carved into the wood. "Don't go out after dark if you hear your name. Don't answer, they take the lost ones." "This is some Blair Witch bullshit," Briggs said, his voice tight. I didn't respond. I was too busy studying the markers, trying to determine when they'd been placed. Some were ancient, the wood rotted, the letters barely legible. But others were recent, months old, maybe weeks. Someone was still maintaining them. Someone was still warning people away, or warning something to stay out. We reached Grafton Ridge just before dusk. The settlement was worse than the satellite photos suggested. Most of the buildings had collapsed under the weight of snow and time. Their walls caved in, roofs sagging. Only 3 structures looked even partially intact: a general store with boarded windows, a small cabin with smoke rising from a metal chimney, and what might have once been a church, its steeple leaning at a 40-degree angle. "There's someone home," Briggs said, nodding toward the cabin. We approached slowly, hands visible, making noise so we wouldn't startle whoever was inside. In rural Alaska, showing up unannounced could get you shot, especially if the residents valued their privacy. As we got closer, the cabin door opened and a man stepped out. He was old, maybe 70, with a beard that reached his chest and eyes that looked like they'd seen too much. He held a rifle across his chest, not aimed at us, but ready. "You're federal," he said. Not a question. I showed him my badge. "FBI, I'm Agent Wyatt. This is Agent Briggs. We're investigating. I know what you're investigating." He lowered the rifle slightly. "Took you long enough to come back. You knew Marcus Halverson?" The old man spat into the snow. Knew of him, never met him. He didn't come through town, just went straight to his camp. Smart man. Why smart? Because Grafton Ridge isn't a place you want to spend time if you can help it. Briggs spoke up. "Then why do you live here?" The old man looked at him like he was stupid. "Because everywhere else is worse." He gestured with the rifle barrel towards the forest. "You boys planning to head up to the geologist's camp?" "That's the idea," I said. "Tonight?" "Tomorrow morning." He laughed, but there was no humor in it. "You'll want to stay here then. I got a shed out back. Not much, but it's got a roof and a wood stove. Better than freezing in a tent. We don't want to impose." "You're not. I'm telling you to stay. Sun goes down in an hour, and you don't want to be out there after dark. Not this close to where he disappeared." Something in his voice made me reconsider. "All right, thank you. Name's Harper. Roy Harper. Been here 43 years. Seen things that would make your hair white, but I'm still breathing, so I must be doing something right." He turned and walked back toward the cabin, then stopped. "One rule. You hear something outside tonight, you ignore it. You hear your name being called, you ignore it. You hear someone asking for help, you especially ignore it. Understood?" "Understood," I said, though I didn't understand at all. The shed was as advertised. Small, drafty, but functional. We set up our sleeping bags on the plywood floor and got the wood stove going. Through a gap in the walls, I could see Harper's cabin about 30 feet away, lamplight glowing in the window. Beyond that, the forest was already darkening, the shadows growing longer and denser. Briggs unpacked our supplies while I reviewed the case file on my tablet, comparing the old photos of Halverson's camp with the GPS coordinates. It would be about 4 miles northwest from here, up a gradual incline through dense forest. In good weather, maybe 2 hours of hiking. In this terrain, probably 3 or 4. "You really think we're going to find anything?" Briggs asked. "I think we're going to find out why he took those pictures. And if we don't like the answer?" I didn't respond. We ate MREs in silence as night fell completely. The temperature dropped fast once the sun was gone, and even with the stove going, I could see my breath inside the shed. Outside, the wind picked up, rattling the walls and making the trees creak. That was the only sound for a long time. Then I heard it. A voice, distant but clear, carried on the wind. "Help me." Briggs heard it too. He sat up straight, his hand moving toward his gun. "Someone's outside." "No," I said quietly. "There isn't." I heard them. Someone needs help. You heard something that sounds like someone needs help. That's not the same thing. He stared at me. What the hell does that mean? Before I could answer, the voice came again, closer this time. Please. I'm hurt. Help me. It was a woman's voice, young, frightened. Every instinct I had screamed to open the door, to go out and find her. But I remembered Harper's warning, and I remembered those markers in the forest. We're not going out there, I said. Someone could be dying. If someone's out there, they're already dead. The voice called out 3 more times, each time closer to the shed, until it sounded like it was right outside the door. Then it stopped. For maybe 10 minutes there was nothing but wind and creaking wood. Then came the footsteps. They circled the shed slowly, crunching through the snow. Not the quick, urgent steps of someone injured and seeking help. These were measured, deliberate, as if whatever was out there was studying the building, looking for a way in. The steps stopped at the door. I heard breathing on the other side, slow and wet, like something with fluid in its lungs. Then, impossibly, I heard my own voice. Briggs, open the door. I'm locked out. I felt the blood drain from my face. Briggs looked at me, then at the door, his face pale in the stove light. That's you, he whispered. That's your voice. Don't touch that door. Agent Wyatt, I'm freezing. Please open the door. My voice, but wrong somehow. The inflection off, like someone doing an impersonation from memory. The door handle rattled, once, twice, then it stopped. The footsteps moved away from the shed, back toward the forest, fading into the distance. I don't know how long Briggs and I sat there in silence, but it felt like hours. Finally, he spoke. What the fuck was that? I don't know. That was your voice. How? I said I don't know. We didn't sleep that night. We sat with our backs against the wall, guns drawn, listening to the wind in the forest and waiting for morning. Around 3 a.m. I heard more footsteps, but these stayed distant, circling the settlement but never coming close. Just before dawn, I heard something else. A long, low sound that might have been wind through trees but sounded more like breathing. Deep, rasping breaths, as if something massive was inhaling and exhaling just beyond the tree line. When the sun finally rose, pale and weak through the overcast, I felt like I'd aged 10 years. Harper was waiting outside his cabin when we emerged, a tin cup of coffee in his hands. He looked us over and nodded. You boys listen good. What was that last night? Briggs asked. That was you staying alive. Harper sipped his coffee. You still planning to head up to the camp? Yes. He set down his cup and walked over to a stack of firewood next to his cabin. Underneath the logs was a small metal lockbox, which he opened with a key from his pocket. Inside was a handheld radio. This is set to channel 12, he said, handing it to me. I'm on the same frequency. You get into trouble up there, you call. I probably can't help you, but at least I'll know what happened. You've been up there? To Halverson's camp? Once, about a month after he disappeared. State troopers asked me to guide them. He paused. I won't go back. Why not? Harper looked at me with those ancient eyes. Because some places remember what happens to them, and that camp remembered what happened to the geologist. It didn't want us there, made that real clear. How? You'll see. He turned to walk back inside, then stopped. One more thing. If you find his body, don't bring it back. Just mark the location and let someone else retrieve it. You understand? Why? Because whatever's up there, it might be using him, and if you bring him down, you bring it with you. With that, he went inside and shut the door. Briggs and I stood in the cold morning air, watching our breath turn to fog. Finally, he spoke. We could turn back. Tell Ortiz the camp is inaccessible. We could, but we're not going to. No. He nodded slowly. All right, let's go find your geologist. We set out at 0800 hours, following the GPS coordinates northwest into the forest. The terrain was rough, the ground rising and falling through shallow valleys and over rocky outcrops. Snow covered everything, hiding roots and holes that could twist an ankle, or worse. We moved slowly, carefully, stopping every 30 minutes to check our position and catch our breath. Around noon, we found the first sign that we were getting close. A piece of orange fabric tied to a tree branch, faded by years of weather but still visible. It was a trail marker, the kind backcountry researchers use to mark their routes. I checked the case file. Halverson had noted using orange markers to tag his path to camp. We're close, I said. More markers appeared as we climbed higher, each one leading us deeper into the forest. The trees here were old and massive, their trunks wider than cars, their branches forming a canopy so dense that almost no light reached the ground. The snow was thinner here, unable to penetrate the overhead cover, and the ground was soft with centuries of needles. It was in this dim, cathedral-like space that we found the camp. Or what was left of it. The tent was still there, remarkably intact given 16 years of weather. It was collapsed on one side, but the orange fabric was unmistakable. Around it, Halverson's equipment lay scattered. A camp stove, a plastic bin that had once held food, a tarp weighed down by rocks. Everything was exactly where the troopers' photos showed it had been in 998. Nothing had been touched. This doesn't make sense, Briggs said. Animals should have torn through this years ago. He was right. Bears, wolves, even ravens should have scattered and destroyed everything. But the camp looked almost preserved, as if something had been keeping scavengers away. We approached carefully. I called out, though I knew no one would answer, and then unzipped the tent flap. The inside took my breath away. Halverson's sleeping bag was still rolled out, the fabric stained and moldy but intact. His field journal sat on top of a plastic case, exactly where the photos from 1998 showed it. But that's not what made me stop. The walls of the tent were covered in writing. Hundreds of words, maybe thousands, scrawled in black marker directly onto the orange fabric. They covered every surface, overlapping and spiraling, written in a hand that started neat, but devolved into manic scratching. I pulled out my phone and started photographing while Briggs stood guard outside. The words were fragments, repeated phrases. It watches, it knows my name, don't look at it, it looks like me, it looks like me, it looks like me, and again, not alone, never. Alone. It followed me here, it wants in. The final entries, near the tent opening, were almost illegible. It's pretending it sounds like help. Don't answer. Don't. I stepped back outside. He was losing his mind. Or he saw something that made him think he was, Briggs said. Check this out. He pointed to the ground near the tent entrance. There were boot prints in the hard-packed dirt, preserved by the shelter of the trees. They were Halverson's, based on the tread pattern. But they didn't lead away from camp. They circled it, round and round, dozens of overlapping tracks, as if he'd been pacing endlessly, wearing a path in the earth. And in the center of the circle, about 10 feet from the tent, was something else. A depression in the ground, about 6 feet long and 2 feet wide, like someone had been lying there. He wasn't alone, I said quietly. Briggs knelt next to the depression. This is old, years old, but look at this. He pointed to marks in the dirt at what would have been the head of the depression. Something was dragged from here northeast into the trees. I followed the faint trail with my eyes. It disappeared into the forest about 20 yards away, swallowed by shadows and undergrowth. That's where we'll find him, I said. We followed the trail, moving slowly, our weapons drawn. The forest seemed to press in around us, the trees closer together, the branches hanging lower. The trail was barely visible, just a disturbance in the needles and a few broken twigs, but it was enough. We found Halverson 30 yards into the trees, or what was left of him. The body was sprawled against the base of a massive spruce, partially covered by needles and decomposition. Most of the soft tissue was gone, taken by scavengers or decay, but the skeleton was intact, still wearing the tattered remains of outdoor clothing. His skull was turned away from us, facing deeper into the forest, but it was his hands that made me stop. His arm bones were extended forward, fingers splayed, as if he'd been reaching for something when he died. And clutched in the skeletal fingers of his right hand was his camera, the one that had been found in his mother's attic, except he was holding a different camera. "That's not right," Briggs said. "The camera was returned to his family." "No," I said slowly, my mind racing. A camera was returned to his family. His mother's camera, the one she kept in her attic. Then what's he holding? I knelt next to the body, careful not to disturb anything, and looked closer. The camera was different from the one we'd developed film from. This one was older, a Nikon, and the lens was aimed not at the ground but straight ahead, into the forest, as if Halverson had died taking one final photograph. I looked in the direction the camera was pointing and felt ice water dump into my stomach. About 15 feet away, partially hidden by trees, was a shape. It took my eyes a moment to resolve it. At first it looked like a tree trunk, pale and smooth, but then I realized it was too straight, too regular. It was standing upright, about 7 feet tall, and it had the rough outline of a human form. But the proportions were wrong. The torso too long, the limbs too thin, the head tilted at an angle that shouldn't be possible. And it was white, not skin white. The kind of white you see on deep-sea creatures that never see sunlight. "Briggs," I said quietly. "I see it." We stood very still. The shape didn't move. It just stood there among the trees, barely visible in the dim light, watching us. At least I think it was watching. It had no visible eyes, no features I could make out from this distance. But I felt its attention like a physical weight. Then Briggs raised his gun. "Don't," I said. But it was too late. The shot was deafening in the quiet forest. The bullet struck the shape dead center, and for a moment I thought it would go down. Instead, the shape tilted, almost curiously like a dog hearing a strange sound. Then it moved. Not walked, moved. It went from standing still to 10 feet closer in the space between heartbeats, so fast I didn't see the transition. One moment it was by the trees, the next it was near Halverson's body, towering over us. Now I could see its face, or where a face should have been. There was nothing there, just a smooth white surface, featureless and terrible. But I felt it looking at me, into me. "Run," I heard myself say. We ran. I don't remember the path back. I don't remember dodging trees or jumping over fallen logs. I just remember running, my breath burning in my lungs, my legs screaming, and behind us the sound of something moving through the forest. It didn't chase us like an animal would. It moved between the trees in ways that defied physics, appearing in my peripheral vision at impossible angles, always at the edge of sight but never quite catching up. And all the while I heard sounds that might have been wind through branches but sounded more like breathing. We burst out of the tree line into the clearing near Grafton Ridge just as the sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of red and orange. Behind us the forest had gone silent. No pursuit. No sounds. Just stillness. Harper was standing outside his cabin, the rifle in his hands. He looked at us, at our expressions, and nodded slowly. "You saw it." I couldn't speak. I bent over, hands on my knees, gasping. "It let you go," Harper continued. "Which means it wanted you to see it. Wanted you to know it's still there." "What is it?" Briggs managed. "Hell if I know. Been here long as the trees, probably longer. Most folks who see it don't come back. The ones that do," he gestured at the forest, "they stay inside at night. They don't answer when they hear voices, and they sure as hell don't go back." I straightened up, my legs still shaking. "Halverson, he's still up there. We need to recover the body." "No," Harper said flatly. "You don't. You do what I said, mark the location, let someone else deal with it. That thing claimed him 16 years ago. He's part of the forest now. I can't just leave him. You can, and you will. Because if you go back, you won't come out a second time. That thing let you go today. It won't be so generous twice." I looked at Briggs. His face was pale, his hands still shaking. I knew he was thinking the same thing I was. That shape in the forest, the impossible way it moved, the absence where its face should have been. Whatever we'd seen up there, it wasn't human. It might never have been human, and it was still watching. That night, from Harper's shed, I heard the voice again. My voice calling from the forest, asking to be let in, begging, screaming. I heard Briggs' voice, too, and Harper's, and voices I didn't recognize. A woman crying, a child calling for help. None of it was real. In the morning, Tom's plane appeared right on schedule. We packed our gear in silence, said nothing to Harper except "thank you," and climbed aboard. As we lifted off, I looked down at Grafton Ridge, at the collapsed buildings, and the dark forest pressing in from all sides. Somewhere in those trees, Marcus Halverson's bones were slowly being absorbed by the earth. And somewhere, standing watch over him, was the thing he'd photographed before he died. The thing that was still there. Back in Anchorage, I should have filed my report and closed the case. I had enough evidence to classify Halverson's death as accidental, exposure and wildlife, end of story. No one at the Bureau would question it. No one except me. But I couldn't let it go. I spent 3 days in my office reviewing everything. The photographs from Halverson's camera, the measurements and positions we'd documented at the camp, the scrawled words on the tent walls, the shape we'd seen in the forest. If it had even been real. That was the question that gnawed at me. Had we really seen it? Briggs and I had been in an isolated location for days, minimal sleep, high stress. Mass hysteria wasn't unheard of in cases like this. 2 trained agents could convince themselves they'd seen something that wasn't there, except for the photographs. I pulled up the enhanced images from Quantico again, studying the 3 dark frames, the shape in the trees, the pale form moving closer, that hand pressed against the lens. Then I did something I probably shouldn't have. I called in a favor. Dr. Patricia Monroe was a forensic anthropologist I'd worked with on a case in Juneau 2 years prior. She owed me nothing, but she was one of the few people I trusted to look at evidence without immediately dismissing it as impossible. "Wyatt," she said when she picked up, "please tell me this is about a nice, normal murder." "Afraid not. I need you to look at some photographs." "How disturbing are we talking?" "Scale of 1 to 10, maybe an 8. She sighed. "Send them over." I emailed her the enhanced images and waited. 20 minutes later, my phone rang. "Where did you get these?" Her voice was tight. "A camera recovered from a deceased geologist." "Why?" "Wyatt, I need you to understand what I'm about to say. I've been doing this work for 17 years. I've examined remains from plane crashes, bear attacks, industrial accidents. I've seen what happens to human bodies under every conceivable circumstance. And And whatever is in these photographs, it's not any of those things. The proportions are wrong. The way it's standing is wrong. And that hand, she paused. The joints don't articulate properly. It's like someone built a human from memory, but got the details wrong. Could it be faked? Prosthetics, makeup, photo manipulation? The metadata says no. These were taken in 1998 on film stock that can't be easily manipulated. And even if someone tried, the proportions would still be off. Whatever was in front of that camera, it was there. My hands felt cold. What are you saying? I'm saying that I can't identify what species created those images. It's not human. It's not any known primate. It's not a bear standing upright or a moose or any animal I'm familiar with. Which leaves two options. Either this is the most sophisticated hoax in forensic history, or you've documented something that shouldn't exist. I thanked her and ended the call. My office suddenly felt very small. I pulled out the radio Harper had given me, Channel 12. I'd kept it charged, though I wasn't sure why. Maybe part of me knew I'd need to call him eventually. I pressed the transmit button. "Harper, this is Agent Wyatt. You there?" Static for a long moment. Then, "I'm here. I need to ask you something. You said you've been in Grafton Ridge for 43 years. How long has that thing been there?" More static. When he spoke again, his voice was weary. "Long as anyone can remember. Maybe longer. The mining company that founded the town, they had records. Strange disappearances. Equipment that got moved overnight. Sounds in the forest. By the time they abandoned the mines, they'd lost 17 men. To what? They called it different names. The White Walker, the Watcher, the Pale Man. Doesn't matter what you call it. It's been here longer than us, and it'll be here long after we're gone. Have you seen it, up close?" A long pause. "Once. Winter of '94. I was trapping about 3 miles north of town. Found tracks in the snow. Looked almost human, but the stride was too long, and they went on for miles without stopping. I followed them to a clearing. That's where I saw it." "What happened?" "It was standing in the center of the clearing, perfectly still. When it noticed me, it tilted its head, just like you described. Then it took one step toward me. Just one. But that step covered 20 feet. I ran, and I haven't gone back to that clearing since." "Why didn't you report it?" "To who? The state troopers? The press? They'd say I was crazy, or drunk, or making it up for attention. Out here, you learn to keep quiet about the things you see. Otherwise, people stop believing anything you say." I understood that. One more question. The voices we heard that night. The ones pretending to be us. Does it do that often? Every night, far as I can tell. It mimics what it hears. Sometimes it's folks who lived here years ago. Sometimes it's people just passing through. I've heard my own voice calling from the woods more times than I can count. Why? Best I can figure? It's trying to lure people out. Trying to understand us, maybe. Or trying to become us. He paused. "If you're thinking about going back, don't. You got lucky once. That's more than most people get." "I'm not going back," I said. Though even as I said it, I wasn't sure it was true. Over the next week, I tried to function normally. I wrote reports, attended briefings, worked on other cases. But every night, when I closed my eyes, I saw that shape in the forest, the way it moved, the absence where its face should have been. And I heard the voices, not real ones. I wasn't that far gone. But in my mind, playing on loop. The sound of my own voice calling from outside Harper's shed, begging to be let in. The breathing in the darkness. The footsteps circling the building. Briggs noticed. He cornered me in the break room one afternoon, looking as haggard as I felt. "You're not sleeping," he said. "Neither are you," he laughed, but it was hollow. I keep thinking about what we saw, or what we think we saw. I've tried to rationalize it. Hallucination, misidentification, stress-induced delusion. But none of it fits. I know. I filed my report as exposure death, probable wildlife interference. Played it safe. What about you? Same. I hadn't, actually. My report was still sitting on my computer, unfinished. I couldn't bring myself to write what we'd really seen, but I also couldn't lie convincingly enough to satisfy myself. "Good," Riggs said. "Because if we put the truth in those reports, we'd both be in psych evaluation by the end of the week." He was right, of course. The Bureau didn't handle well with agents who claimed to see things that couldn't exist. Careers ended over less. But I kept thinking about Halverson, about the words he'd scrawled on his tent walls in the final days before he died. The descent from professional field notes to manic scribbling. He'd been a geologist, a scientist, someone trained to observe and document reality objectively. And reality had broken him. I pulled the case file again that night at home, spreading the documents across my kitchen table. The original trooper reports, the photographs, the enhanced images, and something I'd almost missed. A note in the evidence log, field samples, 47 specimens collected, stored at University of Washington Geology Dept. Halverson had collected rock samples, that's what he'd been doing up there. And those samples had been cataloged and stored before he disappeared. I called the university the next morning. Department of Geological Sciences. "This is FBI Special Agent Wyatt. I'm investigating a case involving one of your former researchers, Marcus Halverson." "Oh, yes. Someone called about him a few months ago. His mother's estate, I think." "That's right. I understand he collected field samples before his death. Are those still in your archives? Let me check." Typing sounds. "Yes, we have them. 47 specimens cataloged and stored, though I should mention there's a note in the file." "What kind of note?" "It says the samples exhibited unusual properties upon initial examination. They were flagged for further study, but that never happened after Dr. Halverson disappeared. Would you like me to send you the preliminary analysis?" "Yes, immediately." The analysis arrived in my inbox 20 minutes later. I opened it, expecting geological jargon I wouldn't understand. What I got instead made my blood run cold. The report was written by a graduate student who'd been tasked with cataloging Halverson's samples in late October 1998, shortly after his disappearance. Most of it was standard. Rock type, mineral composition, estimated age. But near the end, the student had added an addendum. Upon closer examination of specimens 38 to 47, I observed anomalous properties that I cannot adequately explain. These samples, all collected from the same location, exhibit a crystalline structure that does not match any known mineral formation. More concerning, the samples appear to generate a low-level electromagnetic field, approximately 0.3 milligauss, with no apparent source. Most disturbing is the following observation. When kept in close proximity to living tissue, I inadvertently left specimen 42 in my pocket for several hours. Subjects report auditory hallucinations, including voices and whispers. Upon removal of the specimen, hallucinations cease within 15 to 20 minutes. I recommend these samples be quarantined and studied by specialists in electromagnetic phenomena. I further recommend that Dr. Halverson's field site be investigated for potential natural sources of this phenomenon. The report was signed and dated October 28, 1998. 3 days later, according to the university records, the graduate student had withdrawn from the program and left no forwarding address. I read the report 3 times, trying to process what it meant. The samples were generating electromagnetic fields. They were causing hallucinations. And they'd all come from the same location. Halverson's camp. Or more specifically, the area around his camp. The area where we'd seen the shape. I called Dr. Monroe back. I need your opinion on something. Hypothetically, could exposure to certain minerals or electromagnetic fields cause visual and auditory hallucinations? Absolutely. There's documented cases of people experiencing paranormal phenomena in locations with high EMF readings, power plants, caves with certain mineral deposits, even some old buildings with faulty wiring. The human brain is sensitive to electromagnetic interference. What kind of hallucinations? Varies. Visual distortions, shadow people, voices, feelings of being watched. The experiences tend to be consistent across individuals, which is why certain locations develop reputations for being haunted. Could it cause two people to hallucinate the same thing? If they're both exposed to the same field, and they've been primed with the same expectations, say, by reading reports or hearing stories, then yes. The brain would fill in the gaps with similar imagery. I felt a weight lift slightly. So, what we saw could have been a hallucination caused by electromagnetic interference. Could be. Were you near any power sources, underground cables, old equipment? I thought about the camp. The only equipment had been Halverson's gear, all of it long dead. No power sources, no cables, just rocks. Thanks, I said, and hung up. I should have felt relieved. The rational explanation was right there. Halverson had camped in an area with unusual mineral deposits. The electromagnetic fields they generated had caused hallucinations. He'd photographed these hallucinations, spiraled into paranoia, and ultimately wandered into the forest where he died of exposure. Briggs and I had experienced the same thing when we visited the site. The voices, the shape in the trees, all of it could be explained by EMF exposure. Except Halverson's body had been dragged from his camp. I'd seen the marks. Something physical had moved him 30 yards into the trees. Except the thing we'd seen had moved impossibly fast. Hallucinations don't leave tracks or displace air. Except Harper had been seeing and hearing things for 43 years. He couldn't have been constantly exposed to EMF that entire time. And except for one other detail that gnawed at me. If it was just hallucinations, why had the graduate student fled the university after examining the samples? What had she seen? I made a decision I knew I'd probably regret. I called Quantico and arranged to have Halverson's rock samples shipped to the Anchorage field office. If there was something unusual about them, I needed to know. They arrived 3 days later, packed in foam and sealed in plastic containers. 47 specimens, each labeled and cataloged. I took them to the Bureau's small forensics lab and started running basic tests: composition analysis, electromagnetic readings, spectroscopy. The first 46 samples were normal. Granite, basalt, quartz, various sedimentary rocks consistent with the Grafton Ridge geological formation. Sample 47 was different. It was white, almost translucent, with a crystalline structure I didn't recognize. When I placed it under the microscope, I saw formations that looked organic, almost like bone structure, but not quite. And when I brought an EMF meter near it, the needle spiked. 0.3 milligauss. Exactly what the graduate student had reported. I picked up the sample, holding it in my palm. It was cold, colder than the ambient temperature could account for, and as I held it, I started to hear something. Whispering, faint at first, like wind through distant trees, but gradually growing louder, more distinct. Words I couldn't quite make out, spoken in voices I almost recognized. I set the sample down. The whispering stopped. I picked it up again. The whispering returned, clearer this time. And now I could make out what it was saying. Come back, we're waiting. Come back to the ridge. I dropped the sample like it was burning. It hit the table and rolled, coming to rest under the lamp. In the bright light, I could see something I'd missed before. Thin lines running through the crystal like veins, and they were moving, pulsing like a heartbeat. I backed away from the table, my own heart hammering. The sample sat there under the light, perfectly still. But those vein-like structures continued their slow, rhythmic pulse. Then my phone rang. I grabbed it without looking at the caller ID. "Wyatt, you took the samples." Harper's voice. "How did you—" "I called the university yesterday. Asked if anyone had requested access to Halverson's materials. They told me some FBI agent had them shipped to Alaska. Harper, there's something wrong with these rocks. They're generating an electromagnetic field. And when I hold them, get rid of them now, tonight. Take them back to the forest and leave them where you found Halverson." "I can't do that. They're evidence." "Evidence of what? You going to write in your report that you found rocks that whisper? That you saw something in the forest that can't exist? They'll bury you and the case both. And those samples will sit in some evidence locker until another curious agent pulls them out years from now. And then it starts all over again. You're not making sense. Listen to me. Those rocks, they're not just rocks. They're part of it. Part of what lives in that forest. Every time someone takes them away from Grafton Ridge, it comes looking for them. And it won't stop until it gets them back." I looked at the sample on the table. The veins were pulsing faster now. "How do you know this?" I asked. "Because I tried the same thing you're doing now. Winter of '95. Found some unusual stones near the clearing where I'd seen it. Thought maybe if I could get them analyzed, someone would believe me. Someone would send help. What happened? I kept them in my cabin for 2 days. Both nights it came to my door. I heard it walking around outside, breathing, calling to me in my own voice. On the 3rd night, I heard it trying the door handle. I knew if I didn't give the stones back, it was going to come inside. So you returned them. Walked out before dawn, left them in the clearing and ran back. Never touched them again. And that thing, it stopped coming to my door. Stopped calling my name. But it never forgot. Every time I go into the forest, I can feel it watching, making sure I don't take anything else." I stared at the sample. "If this is true, why didn't you warn me before I went up there? Would you have believed me, or would you have thought I was some crazy old hermit?" He was right. I wouldn't have believed him, not then. "What does it want?" I asked quietly. "Hell if I know. Maybe it wants to be left alone. Maybe it wants to keep people away from whatever's in that forest. Or maybe," he paused, "maybe it wants to come out." The line went dead. I stood in the empty lab, looking at specimen 47 pulsing under the light. Part of me wanted to package it back up, send it to more labs, get more opinions, build a case that would force the Bureau to take this seriously. But another part of me, the part that had run through the forest with that thing pursuing us, knew Harper was right. Some things weren't meant to be studied. Some things were supposed to stay where they were, undisturbed. I made my decision. At 11 p.m. that night, I loaded the samples into my truck and started driving north. I'd called Tom earlier and arranged for an emergency flight at first light. He'd asked no questions, just quoted me triple the normal rate and told me to be at the lake by 6 a.m. I drove through the night, reaching Kettle Pond just as the sky began to gray. Tom was already there, the plane ready. "You got a death wish?" he asked when I climbed in with my pack. "Maybe. Can you land near Grafton Ridge?" "In this light? Barely. What's this about?" "I need to return something I borrowed." He looked at me like I was insane, but he fired up the engine. 40 minutes later, we were descending toward the same lake where he'd dropped us off before. The float touched water. We coasted to shore, and I jumped out. "I'll be back in 3 hours," I told him. "I'm not waiting more than 30 minutes this time. Whatever you're doing, do it fast." I hiked to Grafton Ridge as the sun rose, moving quickly. Harper's cabin was dark. I didn't stop. I continued northwest, following the GPS coordinates back to Halverson's camp. The forest was different in the daylight, less oppressive, more ordinary. Just trees and snow and the sound of ravens calling in the distance. But I felt watched the entire time. I reached the camp around 8 a.m. The tent was still there, collapsed further now. I moved past it, into the trees, following the path to where we'd found Halverson's body. It was gone. The skeleton, the camera, all of it. The ground where he'd lain was disturbed, but there was nothing left. Just a dark patch of earth and scattered needles. Something had taken him. I knelt and set down my pack. One by one, I removed the samples and placed them on the ground, arranging them in a rough circle around where the body had been. When I placed the final sample, specimen 47, the whispering returned. But this time it sounded satisfied, like something had been returned home. I stood and backed away. For a moment, nothing happened. Then I felt it, that sensation of being watched, of attention focused on me like a spotlight. I didn't turn around. I didn't want to see what was standing behind me. Instead, I walked, slowly at first, then faster, and then I was running again, crashing through the forest toward Grafton Ridge. I heard nothing behind me this time. No pursuit, no breathing, just silence. I reached Tom's plane with 10 minutes to spare. I was sweating despite the cold, my hands shaking as I climbed aboard. "You look like you've seen a ghost," Tom said. "Something like that. Let's go." As we lifted off, I looked down at the forest one last time. In the trees below, barely visible through the canopy, I thought I saw a pale shape standing near Halverson's camp, watching the plane, watching me. Then we were above the clouds, and Grafton Ridge disappeared behind us. I filed my report 3 days after returning from Grafton Ridge. It was concise, professional, and completely false. Subject, Marcus Halverson, located deceased approximately 0.3 miles from base camp. Preliminary examination suggests death by exposure. Timeline consistent with initial disappearance date of October 12, 1998. Remains recovered and transported to State Medical Examiner. Environmental factors and wildlife activity account for condition and displacement of body. No evidence of foul play. Case recommended for closure. I signed it, dated it, and sent it to Ortiz. She approved it the same day without questions. Marcus Halverson was officially filed away as another casualty of Alaska's wilderness. His death unremarkable except for the 16-year gap between disappearance and recovery. The truth, what really happened to him, what we'd seen in that forest, would never appear in any bureau database. Briggs and I never spoke about Grafton Ridge again. We worked together for another year before he requested a transfer to Seattle. On his last day, he shook my hand and said only, "Don't go back there." "I won't," I promised. "I mean it, Wyatt. Whatever's up there, it's still watching. And now it knows your face." He was right, of course. I felt it sometimes, even back in Anchorage. That sensation of being observed, of something's attention sliding over me like oil. It was worst at night, when the city lights dimmed and the darkness pressed close. I'd hear whispers at the edge of hearing, words I couldn't quite make out. But they never got louder. Whatever had been in those samples, whatever connection had been formed when I held that white stone, it had been severed when I returned them to the forest. or so I told myself. 3 months later, I got a call from the University of Washington. It was a different administrator this time, her voice tight with concern. "Agent Wyatt, this is regarding your inquiry about Marcus Halverson's field samples." "What about them?" "Well, they're missing. We went to retrieve them for disposal per your request, but the storage container is empty. The seal was intact, the lock undamaged, but all 47 specimens are gone." I felt cold. "When did you discover this?" "Yesterday. We've searched the entire facility, but there's no sign of them. It's like they simply vanished." I told her I'd look into it, then hung up and immediately called Harper. It took 8 rings before he picked up. "It's Wyatt. The samples are gone." A long silence. "From where?" "The university. Storage locker. Sealed container." "When?" "Sometime in the last month. They just discovered it yesterday." I heard him breathing on the other end of the line, slow and measured. Finally, "It took them back." "What do you mean?" "That thing in the forest. It's not bound by the same rules we are. If it wants something bad enough, it can reach out and take it. Doesn't matter how far away, doesn't matter how many locks are in the way. You returned the samples, but the university kept records, kept the exact coordinates of where they came from. That was enough. That's not possible. You saw it move, Wyatt. You saw how it covered 20 feet in the space between heartbeats. You telling me that's possible?" I had no answer. "It's trying to keep itself hidden," Harper continued. "Every piece of evidence, every sample, every photograph, it wants them gone. And it's patient. It'll wait years, decades, centuries if it has to. Because it knows that eventually we'll forget. We'll convince ourselves it wasn't real. And then it can go back to being nothing but stories told around fires." "The photographs," I said suddenly. "The ones from Halverson's camera, the digital copies we made. Check them." I pulled up the files on my computer, the enhanced images from Quantico. The first 12 frames loaded fine. Geological formations, rock samples, Halverson's field documentation. But frames 24 through 26, the ones that had shown the shape in the trees, the ones that had shown that impossible hand reaching toward the lens, they were black, not corrupted, not damaged. Just empty frames, as if nothing had ever been recorded there. "They're gone," I said, my voice hollow. "I know," Harper said. "Happened to every photo I ever tried to take too. Give it time, and you'll start to question if you really saw anything at all. That's how it survives, by making us doubt our own memories. I won't forget. You will. Maybe not this year, maybe not in 5 years. But eventually, your brain will file it away under impossible, and you'll convince yourself it was stress, or hallucination, or any other rational explanation. Because the alternative, accepting that there are things in the world that shouldn't exist, is too much for most people to handle." I wanted to argue, but I couldn't. Already, sitting in my office with the morning sun streaming through the windows and the sounds of normal city traffic outside, the events at Grafton Ridge felt distant, like a nightmare remembered in daylight. "What about you?" I asked. "How do you live with it?" "I don't forget," Harper said quietly. "I can't, because I'm still here, still in Grafton Ridge, and every night I hear it walking past my cabin. Every night I hear my own voice calling from the trees. You get used to it eventually, or you go mad. I'm not sure there's much difference. You could leave, move to Fairbanks, Anchorage, anywhere. And let it spread? Let it find new hunting grounds? No. Someone has to stay. Someone has to remember, has to keep warning people away. Otherwise, more folks like Halverson end up dead in the woods, and nobody knows why. That's not a life." "No," he agreed. "But it's a purpose. We said goodbye, and I haven't spoken to Harper since. Sometimes I wonder if he's still there, still keeping watch over that cursed stretch of forest, or if the thing that walks between the trees finally came through his door one night. I finished my career with the Bureau 3 years later, took early retirement, cited family reasons. The truth was, I couldn't handle the cases anymore. Every missing person in the wilderness, every unexplained death, I'd see connections that weren't there, or connections that were there but that nobody else could see. I moved south to Oregon, as far from Alaska as I could get while staying in the Pacific Northwest. Built a small house near the coast where I can hear the ocean at night instead of forest sounds. Tried to forget, but I can't, because 3 weeks ago I received something in the mail. A package, unmarked, no return address. Inside was a photograph. It showed Grafton Ridge, taken from the air, recent enough that I could see Tom's plane pulled up to the shore of Kettle Pond, and written on the back in marker, "He never found the body. I've checked the official records. According to the state medical examiner's office, no remains matching Marcus Halverson's description were ever transported from Grafton Ridge. The body I claimed to have recovered in my report. It was never there, which means I filed a false report, or I hallucinated finding a body, or something else happened, something I can't remember or can't accept. I've pulled the case file 100 times since receiving that photograph, trying to find inconsistencies, trying to determine what was real and what wasn't. But the more I look, the less certain I become. Did we really see that shape in the forest? Did I really return the samples? Or has my memory been altered, edited, pieces removed and rearranged until the truth is indistinguishable from fabrication? Harper was right. I'm forgetting. Not the details, those remain sharp and clear. But I'm forgetting what they mean, forgetting that they matter. Last night, I heard something outside my house. Footsteps on gravel, circling the building. When I looked out the window, I saw nothing. But this morning I found boot prints in the mud. My boot prints. The same Timberlands I wore to Grafton Ridge. Except I was inside all night. I haven't slept since. I sit here now writing this down, trying to create a record of what happened. Not for the Bureau, they'll never believe it. Not for the public, they'll think I'm insane. But for the next agent who opens case file number AK 1998-4471, who sees the inconsistencies and decides to investigate. Don't go to Grafton Ridge. Don't touch the samples. Don't look for the body. And if you hear your name being called from the forest, don't answer. Because whatever is in those woods, it's not bound by death or distance or time. It's patient, it's old, and it never forgets, even when we do. I keep the photograph on my desk now, next to my old bureau credentials and my service weapon. I look at it every morning, forcing myself to remember, forcing myself not to rationalize it away. But it's getting harder. Sometimes I'll look at the photo and see just an aerial shot of forest. No plane, no lake, just trees stretching to the horizon. Other times, I'll see shapes in the tree line, pale figures standing watch. I don't know which version is real anymore. Last week, I found something in my closet. A white stone, smooth and crystalline, with vein-like structures running through it. It looked exactly like specimen 47, the one I'd returned to the forest. Except I know I returned it. I remember placing it on the ground, remember hearing that satisfied whisper. Unless I didn't. Unless I'm still there, still in those woods, and everything after, the flight back, the retirement, this house by the ocean, is just a story I'm telling myself while I freeze to death in the Alaska wilderness. I hold the stone in my hand now. It's cold, and if I listen carefully, I can hear it whispering. "Come back," it says. "We're waiting. Come back to the ridge." The emergency call came through dispatch at 4:47 a.m. on a Thursday in November, 12 years after Whitaker Station had been officially decommissioned and abandoned. I was on night duty at the Anchorage field office, nursing bad coffee and working through a backlog of financial fraud cases that made my eyes glaze over. The phone on my desk rang with the internal line tone that meant something urgent was coming through from the operations center. "Agent Tate, you're needed in the comm room, now." I made my way down the hall, past empty offices and flickering fluorescent lights. The operations center was on the second floor, a windowless room filled with monitors and radio equipment that tracked everything from air traffic to emergency beacons across the state. The night operator, a woman named Sandra who'd been with the Bureau longer than I'd been alive, was staring at one of her screens with an expression I'd never seen on her face before. Fear. "What is it?" I asked. She pointed at the screen without looking away. "Whitaker Station just came online." I moved closer. The screen showed a digital map of Alaska's interior, overlaid with various signal markers. One of them, previously dark, was now glowing green in a remote area roughly 200 miles north of Fairbanks. "That's impossible," I said. "Whitaker was shut down in 2002. The equipment was removed, the buildings were secured, there's no power out there." "I know what the records say. I'm telling you what's happening right now." She tapped the keyboard, bringing up more data. At 0447 hours, we received an automated distress signal from Whitaker's emergency beacon. Duration, 6 seconds. Then it cut out. Equipment malfunction. Old battery finally died and triggered a false alarm. That's what I thought too, so I ran a diagnostic. She pulled up another screen. The signal included a timestamp. Want to guess what time it said? 4:47 a.m. No. According to the beacon's internal clock, it was 4:47 a.m. on November 14, 1996. I stared at the screen. 1996. 8 years before the station was even built. That's a corrupted timestamp. The beacon's clock reset or something. Sandra shook her head. "I've seen corrupted timestamps. They read zeros, or maxed values, or random strings. They don't read specific dates from the past." She brought up the signal analysis. "And there's something else. The beacon shouldn't have had power to transmit. According to our records, the batteries were removed during decommissioning. So where did the power come from? Maybe someone broke in. Squatters, vandals. In November? In the middle of nowhere? The access road washed out 6 years ago. You'd need a helicopter or a full day's hike just to reach the place." I rubbed my eyes. It was too early for this. "All right, what do you want me to do about it?" "Protocol says any signal from a federal installation requires investigation, active or decommissioned. I already called it in to the SAC. He wants someone on site within 48 hours. Of course he does." She finally looked at me. "Tate, I've been monitoring signals across this state for 19 years. Equipment fails all the time. False alarms, weather interference, animal damage. I've seen it all, but I've never seen anything like this. That signal was clean, professional, like someone just powered up the station and hit the emergency button. Then that's what we'll find. Someone broke in, triggered the beacon, probably kids or urban explorers." "Probably," she agreed. But she didn't sound convinced. By 8 a.m., I was in the special agent in charge's office getting my briefing. Thomas Reeves was a career bureau man, 15 years from retirement and counting the days. He dealt with Alaska cases the same way he dealt with everything else. By the book, minimal risk, maximum documentation. "Whitaker Station," he said, sliding a file folder across his desk. built in '98 as a field operations base for remote investigations in the interior. Housed up to 6 agents, had satellite communications, emergency medical facilities, the works. Operational until 2002 when budget cuts forced consolidation. Officially closed and secured in March of that year. I opened the file. Inside were photographs of a cluster of buildings surrounded by endless forest. A main structure that looked like a large cabin, 2 smaller outbuildings, and a communications tower. Everything looked well maintained in the photos, almost pristine. Why'd we need a station that far north? I asked. Various reasons. Search and rescue coordination, fugitive apprehension in the bush, liaison with remote communities. But the main purpose was to monitor and investigate unusual activity in the interior. Unusual how? Reeves hesitated. Missing persons, a lot of them. Between 1998 and 2002, we had 17 unsolved disappearances within a 100-mile radius of Whitaker. Hikers, hunters, researchers, even a few locals. No bodies recovered, no evidence of foul play, just people walking into the wilderness and never coming back. 17 in 4 years. That's above average, but not unprecedented for Alaska. No, but the pattern was unusual. All the disappearances occurred between October and March. All of them happened after dark. And in every case, the missing person's last known contact mentioned hearing or seeing something in the woods. I looked up from the file. Seeing what? Lights, usually, moving through the trees. Some described voices calling to them. A few mentioned figures standing at the edge of campsites or near roads. Fish and Game thought it might be poachers or smugglers operating in the area, but we never found evidence of criminal activity. So what happened? Why'd the Bureau close the station? Because after 2002, the disappearances stopped. Completely. It was like whatever had been happening just ended. The station became redundant, the budget was allocated elsewhere, and Whitaker was shut down. He pulled out another document, this one stamped with red ink. Decommissioning Report, Whitaker Station. According to this, the station was fully cleared in March 2002. All equipment removed, all files transferred to Fairbanks, all power sources disconnected. The buildings were sealed but left standing in case we ever needed to reactivate the site. No one's been there since. Until now. Until now. Reeves leaned back in his chair. I need you to fly up there, check the buildings, determine how that beacon activated, and secure the site. Take someone with you. Budget allows for 3 days on site, including travel time. Find out what triggered that signal, document it, and close the file. And if it wasn't equipment failure, then find out who's up there and why. But Tate? He fixed me with a hard look. This is a routine site inspection, nothing more. I don't want theories. I don't want speculation. And I sure as hell don't want another Grafton Ridge situation. I'd heard about Grafton Ridge. Everyone in the Alaska office had. An agent named Wyatt had gone up to investigate a cold case and come back changed. He'd filed a report, took early retirement 6 months later, and never spoke about what he'd seen up there. The case file was sealed, stamped with classifications that made it clear we weren't supposed to ask questions. Understood, I said. Good. There's a supply helicopter heading north tomorrow morning with provisions for remote ranger stations. I've arranged for them to drop you at Whitaker. They'll swing back to pick you up in 72 hours. That gives you plenty of time to figure out what's going on. I spent the rest of the day preparing. The first call I made was to the Bureau's personnel office, requesting a partner for the assignment. They connected me with Agent Morgan, a younger agent who'd transferred from the Seattle office 3 months earlier. She had search and rescue training and experience with remote operations. Exactly what I needed. We met in the equipment room to gear up. Morgan was in her late 20s, dark hair pulled back in a practical ponytail, the kind of no-nonsense competence that made her good at her job. She looked over the mission brief while I signed out cold weather gear, satellite phones, and emergency supplies. "Whitaker Station," she said. "I've heard of it." "What did you hear?" "That it was built on a bad piece of land. That the agents stationed there had problems." "What kind of problems?" She shrugged. "Mental health stuff, mostly. Stress, isolation, paranoia. The kind of thing that happens when you stick people in the middle of nowhere for months at a time. A few of them requested early transfers. One supposedly had a breakdown and had to be airlifted out." "Who told you this?" "Just office gossip. Could be bullshit." She looked at me. "Why? You think there's something to it?" "I think 12 years is a long time for equipment to spontaneously reactivate. And I think distress signals don't generate themselves. So someone's up there. Maybe. Or maybe the place has a squatter problem, and we're about to have an awkward conversation with some off-grid hermit." Morgan smiled. 3 days in the bush chasing ghosts. Could be worse. She had no idea how right she was. The helicopter picked us up at dawn the next morning. It was a Bell 407, civilian contractor doing supply runs for the Park Service and Forest Service. The pilot, a woman named Chavez, loaded our gear without comment, then gestured for us to climb aboard. "Ever been to Whitaker?" she asked as we lifted off. "No," I said. "You?" "Twice. Last time was maybe 8 years ago, dropping off surveyors. Place gave me the creeps." "Why?" "I don't know, just did. The buildings are too quiet, you know, like they're waiting for something." She adjusted course, heading north. "You know it used to be staffed, right? FBI field station? That's why we're going. Someone triggered the emergency beacon." Chavez frowned. "That's weird. There's no power up there. I mean, unless someone brought a generator, but even then." She shook her head. "You'll see when we get there. The place feels wrong." We flew in silence after that, watching the landscape transform beneath us. Anchorage gave way to foothills, which gave way to endless forest broken only by frozen rivers and the occasional clearing. No roads, no houses, just wilderness stretching to the horizon. 2 hours into the flight, Chavez pointed ahead. "That's it." Whitaker Station sat in a clearing carved from the forest, accessible by a dirt track that had mostly grown over. From the air, it looked smaller than I expected. 1 main building, 2 outbuildings, and the communications tower rising above the trees. Everything was covered in a thin layer of snow, undisturbed except for animal tracks. As we descended, I noticed something odd. The main building had lights on. Not all of them, just a few windows glowing with what looked like lamplight. But that was impossible. The power had been disconnected 12 years ago. "You see that?" Morgan asked, pointing. "I see it." Chavez brought us down in the clearing about 50 yards from the main building, the rotor wash kicking up snow and dead leaves. As soon as we touched down, she killed the engine and turned to face us. "Listen, I'm scheduled to pick you up in 3 days, same time, same location. But if you need extraction earlier, you've got my frequency on your sat phone. Call any time, day or night, and I'll get a bird up here as fast as I can." "We'll be fine," I said. "Yeah." She didn't look convinced. "Just, if something feels off, trust your gut. This place has a way of getting into your head." We unloaded our gear and watched the helicopter lift off, the sound of its rotors fading until we were left with absolute silence. Not even wind. Just the kind of quiet that makes you aware of your own breathing. Morgan was staring at the main building. Those lights weren't on in the decommissioning photos. No, they weren't. So, either someone's here or the power's back on somehow. I shouldered my pack. Let's find out. We approached the main building carefully, hands near our weapons. The structure was larger up close, a 2-story log construction with a covered porch that ran the length of the front. The door was closed, and through the windows I could see what looked like lamplight flickering. Not electric light, oil lamps or candles. I tried the door, unlocked. Inside, the station was exactly as the decommissioning photos had shown it. Open floor plan with a central common area, kitchen to the left, offices and storage to the right, stairs leading to the second floor where the sleeping quarters would be. Everything was covered in a thin layer of dust, but otherwise the place looked maintained, clean, almost lived in. And in the kitchen, on the counter next to the sink was a coffee maker with fresh coffee in the pot. Morgan moved past me, touching the pot with the back of her hand. It's warm. How warm? Like it was made this morning. I looked around the room. No dishes in the sink, no food out, no signs of habitation except for the coffee and those oil lamps burning on the tables. Someone had been here, possibly within the last few hours. FBI, I called out. This is a federal installation. If anyone's present, identify yourself. Silence. Morgan had her weapon drawn now, scanning the corners. Upstairs? Upstairs. We climbed the stairs slowly, every creak of the floorboard sounding like a gunshot in the quiet. The second floor had 6 small bedrooms, 3 on each side of a central hallway, and a communal bathroom at the far end. All the doors were open except one. I moved to the closed door and knocked. FBI, open the door. Nothing. I tried the handle, locked from the inside. Morgan positioned herself to the side, weapon ready, while I stepped back and kicked the door just below the handle. It took 2 kicks before the wood splintered and the door swung open. The room was empty. Not just unoccupied, empty. No furniture, no dust, nothing. Just bare floorboards and walls and a window looking out over the forest. But that wasn't the strange part. The strange part was the smell. Coffee. Fresh coffee. As if someone had been drinking it in this room moments before we arrived. This doesn't make sense, Morgan said quietly. I walked to the window and looked out. From this angle, I could see the 2 outbuildings and the communications tower. No movement, no vehicles, no sign of whoever had made that coffee or lit those lamps. Then I noticed something on the windowsill. A mug. White ceramic, with the FBI seal printed on the side, half full of coffee that was still steaming. I picked it up. The ceramic was warm. Someone was just here, I said. Where'd they go? I looked around the empty room. 1 door, the one we'd kicked in. 1 window, closed and latched from the inside. No other exits, no closets or hiding places. Whoever had been in this room had vanished. Morgan was checking her radio, frowning. I'm not getting any signal. You? I pulled out my sat phone. No signal. The emergency radio we'd brought showed only static across all frequencies. Interference from the tower, maybe? Morgan suggested. Maybe. Let's check the communications room. We found it on the first floor. A small office in the back of the building filled with radio equipment and computer terminals. Everything was covered in dust except for 1 terminal, which was powered on and displaying a login screen. Morgan leaned over the keyboard. Systems active. But according to the decommissioning report, all computers were removed. Someone brought this one, or I hesitated. Or it was never removed. She tried a few common passwords. Nothing worked. The system just displayed, access denied, invalid credentials. Then the screen flickered and new text appeared. Last login, November 14th, 2002. 16:47:32 user, admin, session duration, 8 hours, 14 minutes. I read it twice. November 14th, 2002. The station had been decommissioned in March of that year. There shouldn't have been anyone logged in 8 months later. Check the date, Morgan said, pointing at the bottom of the screen. The system clock read November 14th, 2002, 16:47:33 then. 16:47:34, 16:47:35, the clock was running, but it was running in 2002. It's gotta be a bug, I said. System clock got corrupted somehow, defaulted to an old date. Then why is it counting forward? Morgan asked. If it's corrupted, shouldn't it be frozen or jumping randomly? She was right. The clock was advancing normally, 1 second at a time, as if it genuinely believed it was November 14th, 2002. I moved to the next terminal, also powered on, also showing November 14th, 2002. All the computers in the room were running, all of them locked in the same day 12 years ago. We need to check the generator, I said. Find out where this power's coming from. The generator shed was one of the outbuildings, a small wooden structure about 30 yards from the main building. Inside, covered in dust and cobwebs, was an industrial diesel generator, the kind designed to run for days on a single tank. According to the fuel gauge, it was empty. But it was running. I could hear it, a low, rhythmic hum, feel the vibration through the floorboards. The generator was active, running smoothly, producing power despite having no fuel. Morgan checked the connections. This line feeds directly to the main building. It's providing all the power for the lights, the computers, everything. On what? Air? I don't know. She tapped the fuel gauge. This has to be broken. The generator can't run without fuel. I looked at the diesel tanks mounted to the wall. All empty. The valves rusted shut. The fuel lines were dry. And yet the generator continued its steady, impossible hum. This is wrong, Morgan said. All of this is wrong. The coffee, the computers, the generator. Someone's messing with us. Or something's wrong with the place itself. She looked at me. What's that supposed to mean? I didn't answer. I was thinking about what Reeves had said. The disappearances, the patterns, the reports of lights and voices in the woods. And I was thinking about that beacon signal with its timestamp from 1996, 2 years before the station was even built. We need to check the other building, I said. The one with the emergency beacon. The communications tower stood at the edge of the clearing, a metal lattice structure maybe 60 feet tall, with a small equipment shack at its base. The door was padlocked, but the lock was old and rusted. It took me 3 tries with my pocket tool to break it. Inside, the equipment shack was cramped and cold. Most of the space was taken up by backup batteries and emergency equipment, all of it covered in dust and clearly non-functional. But in the center of the room, mounted on the wall, was the emergency beacon. It was active. The LED indicator was glowing green, and the digital display showed signal transmitted 04:47:18. The timestamp, though, made my stomach drop. November 14th, 1996. That's impossible, Morgan said. The station wasn't built until 1998. I looked at the beacon more carefully. It was a standard emergency transmitter, the kind designed to broadcast on multiple frequencies if the main communications failed. Someone would have to manually activate it, either by pressing the emergency button or by setting it to automatic mode. The switch was set to automatic, but the activation log showed only one transmission, the one we'd received that morning. Or had we received it? The timestamp suggested it was sent in 1996, 8 years before the station existed. Check the date on your watch, I said. Morgan looked. November 15th, 2014. Now check your sat phone. She pulled it out. The screen showed no signal, searching, and below that, system date, November 14th, 2002. Her face went pale. That's not possible. The date's wrong. It's not wrong. The system's pulling the date from the local network. I gestured around us. And according to everything in this station, it's November 14th, 2002. That's insane. Time doesn't just reset. No, it doesn't. But something here is making all the electronics think it's 12 years ago, and I don't think it's a malfunction. We stood in silence, the only sound the faint hum of the generator in the distance. Then Morgan spoke, her voice quiet. What if we're not really here? What? What if this is some kind of, I don't know, temporal echo or something? What if the station exists in multiple times at once, and we've somehow crossed into a version that's stuck in 2002? That's not how reality works. Then how do you explain the coffee? The generator? The computers? She looked at me. Someone made coffee this morning. Someone logged into those systems. But according to the dust and the decay, no one's been here in years. How do you explain that? I couldn't. Every rational explanation felt insufficient. Equipment malfunction didn't account for fresh coffee. Squatters didn't explain generators running without fuel. And nothing explained the consistent timestamp anomalies showing dates that shouldn't be possible. We need to search the rest of the station, I said finally. Document everything. Take photos, gather evidence. Then we get Chavez back here and we leave. And tell Reeves what? That we found a time machine. We tell him the truth. The station is experiencing unexplained technical anomalies, possibly equipment failure or environmental interference. We recommend a full technical team investigate before anyone else is sent here. Morgan nodded, but she didn't look convinced. Neither was I. We spent the next 2 hours methodically searching every building. The more we found, the more disturbed I became. In the main building, we discovered a refrigerator that was running and stocked with food. Milk, eggs, fresh vegetables, all with expiration dates from November 2002. In one of the offices, we found a calendar on the wall, turned to November 2002, with several dates marked: meetings, supply runs, routine maintenance. And in every room, every corner, we found evidence that someone had been living here recently. Beds that were made, trash cans that had been emptied, dishes that were clean. As if the station was fully staffed and operational. But there was no one here. In the second outbuilding, which housed storage and emergency equipment, we found something that made me stop cold. A logbook, lying open on a desk, with entries dated November 14th, 2002. The handwriting was neat, professional. 600, shift change. Agent Morrison relieving Agent Keller. 0745. Routine perimeter check. No anomalies observed. 1200. Communications test successful. All systems nominal. 1600. Subject reported hearing voices near north perimeter. Investigated. No evidence found. That last entry was circled in red ink with a note scrawled beside it. Third report this week. Recommend psych evaluation. I flipped back through the pages. The logbook covered the entire month of November 2002, entries every few hours documenting routine station operations. Shift changes, equipment checks, supply inventories. Normal, boring, procedural work. Except for recurring entries about subjects hearing voices and anomalous sounds in the perimeter. The last entry was dated November 14th, 2002 at 16:47 hours. The exact time showing on every computer in the station. It read, generator failure. Emergency power activated. Investigating source of... The sentence ended mid-word. After that, blank pages. "Tate," Morgan called from across the room. "You need to see this." She was standing in front of a wall of filing cabinets, one drawer pulled open. Inside were personnel files, dozens of them, each one documenting an agent who'd been stationed at Whitaker between 1998 and 2002. Morgan held up one file. "This is Agent Morrison, the one who wrote that last log entry." I took the file. It contained standard personnel information: service record, certifications, medical reports. But attached to the front was a black and white photograph of a man in his 30s, dark hair, serious expression. I'd seen that face before, recently. "Where?" Morgan asked when I told her. "I don't know, but I've seen him, maybe in the personnel database, or..." Then it hit me. The coffee mug. The one on the windowsill upstairs, still steaming. It had been sitting next to something I'd barely registered at the time: a photograph in a small frame. A photograph of 3 people standing in front of Whitaker Station, smiling at the camera. The man in the center was Agent Morrison. We ran back to the main building, taking the stairs 2 at a time. The room was exactly as we'd left it. Empty, no furniture, the window latched shut. But the coffee mug was gone. So was the photograph. "It was right here," I said, pointing at the windowsill. "The mug and the frame both right here." Morgan checked the floor, the corners, anywhere the items might have fallen. Nothing. Someone took them while we were in the other building. We would have seen them. We were only gone 20 minutes and we had line of sight to this building the entire time. Then where? A sound from downstairs. Footsteps. Someone walking across the common area. We drew our weapons and moved to the hallway. From the top of the stairs, I could see the main room below. Empty. But I could still hear the footsteps, clear and distinct, pacing back and forth. "FBI!" I shouted. "Identify yourself!" The footsteps stopped. Then, impossibly, I heard a voice. My voice. "FBI! Identify yourself!" It was coming from below, from the common area. My words, repeated back to me in my own voice, but with a slight delay, like an echo. Morgan's face had gone white. "That's you. That's your voice." The footsteps resumed, pacing, back and forth. And now I could hear breathing, slow and steady, as if whoever was down there was waiting for something. "We need to leave," Morgan whispered, "right now." But as we started down the stairs, the lights went out. Not gradually, all at once, every lamp, every light in the building extinguished in an instant. The only illumination came from the weak November sunlight filtering through the windows. And in that dim light I saw something that made my blood freeze. At the bottom of the stairs, standing in the shadows of the common area, was a figure. It was tall, man-shaped, wearing what looked like standard FBI field gear. But there was something wrong with it. The proportions were off, the posture too rigid, and where a face should have been, there was only darkness. The figure tilted its head, as if studying us. Then it spoke in my voice. "FBI, identify yourself." Morgan grabbed my arm. "Go. Go now." We backed up the stairs, weapons trained on the figure. It didn't follow, it just stood there, motionless, that empty space where its face should be pointed directly at us. When we reached the second floor, we ran, through the hallway, into one of the back bedrooms, slamming the door behind us. I pushed a dresser against the door while Morgan checked the window. "It won't open," she said, yanking at the frame. "It's sealed or painted shut." "Break it." She used the butt of her gun to smash the glass, clearing the fragments from the frame. Below us was about a 12-foot drop to the ground. Not ideal, but manageable. From the hallway, I heard footsteps again. slow, methodical, coming up the stairs. "Go," I told Morgan. She climbed through the window and dropped, landing in the snow and rolling. I was about to follow when the door started to open, the dresser scraping across the floor. I threw myself through the window, hit the ground hard, pain shooting through my ankle. Morgan pulled me up, and we ran towards the tree line, not looking back. We were maybe 50 yards into the forest when I finally stopped, gasping for breath. Behind us, Whitaker Station sat silent and dark, no sign of movement. "What the hell was that?" Morgan demanded. "I don't know." "It spoke with your voice, Tate. It was imitating you." "I know. And the coffee, the logs, the dates, none of this makes any sense." "I know." I forced myself to calm down. "We need to get to higher ground, get a signal on the sat phone, and call for extraction. Chavez said she'd come early if we needed her." We climbed a ridge overlooking the station, trying to get clear of whatever interference was blocking our communications. Morgan kept trying the sat phone while I scanned the area with binoculars. That's when I saw them. Lights in the station windows. Not lamplight this time, but the flickering glow of computer monitors, and through one window I saw movement. Figures walking through the common area. 3 of them, maybe 4, dressed in bureau gear, moving normally, like agents going about their routine duties. "Morgan, look at this." She raised her binoculars. "Who are they?" "I don't know, but they weren't there 5 minutes ago." As we watched, one of the figures approached a window and looked out. Even at this distance, I could make out enough detail to recognize the face. Agent Morrison, the one from the personnel file. He stood at the window for a long moment, staring in our direction. Then he raised one hand and waved. Not a friendly wave, a beckoning gesture. "Come back." "Got signal," Morgan said suddenly. "It's weak, but..." The sat phone screen flickered, then displayed. System date, November 14th, 2002, then it went dead. We tried for another hour, moving to different positions, trying every frequency and every device we had. Nothing worked. Whatever was wrong with Whitaker Station, its influence extended far beyond the buildings themselves. As the sun started to set, we made camp in a small depression surrounded by trees, far enough from the station to feel safe, but close enough to keep watch. We didn't build a fire, didn't want to advertise our location, and we took turns on guard while the other tried to rest. I had first watch. Morgan fell asleep almost immediately. Exhaustion finally overtaking fear. I sat with my back against a tree, weapon in my lap, watching the station below. The lights stayed on all night. Through the windows, I could see those figures moving around, living their normal routines. At one point, I watched someone, maybe Morrison, walk out to the generator shed, check something, then walk back. Routine maintenance, normal operations, as if nothing was wrong, as if it was November 14th, 2002, and Whitaker Station was still fully staffed and operational. Around 3 a.m., I heard something in the forest behind us, footsteps crunching through snow. I woke Morgan silently, and we both turned to face the sound. A figure emerged from the trees. It was me, not something that looked like me, not an imitation or a shadow. It was me, down to the last detail. Same clothes, same gear, same weapon. It walked into our camp, looked directly at me, and smiled. "You should come back," it said in my voice. "The station needs you." I didn't move, didn't breathe. The duplicate Tate tilted his head. "Something's wrong with the timeline. We're stuck. We need you to fix it." "Who are you?" Morgan asked, her voice shaking. The duplicate turned to her. "I'm Agent Tate. Who are you?" "I'm Agent Morgan. You're not Tate. He's sitting right here." The duplicate looked confused. It turned back to me, studying my face. "No," it said slowly. "I'm Agent Tate. I've been stationed at Whitaker for 6 months. I know who I am." "What year is it?" I asked. 2002, November 14th. "It's 2004. The duplicate frowned. "That's not possible. I just logged into the system. It's November 14th, 2002. I have the date right here." It patted its pockets, looking for something that wasn't there. Its movements became more agitated, more confused. "I had it. I had the date. Where is it? Where—" Then it stopped moving. Froze completely, like someone had hit pause on a video. After maybe 10 seconds it moved again, but differently. Jerkier, wrong. "Come back to the station," it said. But the voice was off now. Not quite my voice. A recording played at the wrong speed. Then it turned and walked back into the forest, its movements stilted and mechanical. Neither Morgan nor I spoke for a long time. Finally, as the sun began to rise, she said, "We can't stay here. Chavez won't be back for 2 more days. Then we hike out, follow the old road back to civilization. That's 40 miles at least, through wilderness, in November. Better than staying here." She looked at me. "Whatever this place is, it's not just a station anymore. It's something else, something wrong. And the longer we stay, the more likely we end up like—" She gestured toward the trees where the duplicate had disappeared. "Like that." She was right. But before we left, I needed answers. "One more sweep," I said. "Daylight. We go in, access the computer systems, pull whatever files we can, and document everything. Then we leave and never come back." "Are you insane?" "Probably. But I didn't come up here to run, and I need to know what happened to those agents. Morrison, Keller, all of them. They didn't just disappear. They're still here, somehow, stuck. And maybe we can figure out why." Morgan looked at me like I'd lost my mind. Maybe I had. But I couldn't shake the feeling that Whitaker Station was trying to tell us something. That those figures in the windows, those voices in the dark, they were warnings. Or cries for help. We approached the station at dawn, when the light was weak and the shadows were long. The buildings looked different in the morning. Less threatening, more sad. Like something abandoned that was desperately trying to remember what it used to be. The front door was unlocked, same as before. Inside, the station was empty again. No figures, no movement, just silence and dust and those oil lamps burning on the tables. Their wicks somehow still supplied with fuel after 12 years. Morgan stayed by the door, weapon drawn, while I moved to the communications room. The computers were still active, all of them locked at that same login screen. I pulled out a USB drive, one I'd brought specifically for data recovery, and plugged it into the main terminal. The system didn't recognize it. The USB port was dead, or the protocols were incompatible, or something else I didn't understand. Instead, I tried the keyboard, typing random commands, trying to bypass the login. Nothing worked. The system just repeated, "Access denied. Invalid credentials." Then I noticed something. In the corner of the screen, partially hidden by a corrupted graphic, was text so small I'd missed it before. "Session timeout in 06:47:12. A countdown, 6 hours, 47 minutes until what? The session ended, the system reset, or something else?" I called Morgan over. "Look at this, the system's counting down." She studied the screen. "Counting down to what?" "I don't know. But if this is a loop, if the station is replaying November 14th, 2002 over and over, then maybe this is when it resets, when it starts again. That's impossible. Everything about this place is impossible, but the timing makes sense. The last log entry was at 16:47 hours. 6 hours and 47 minutes later would be 20:34 hours, 11:34 p.m. Maybe that's when whatever happened here reached its conclusion. Or its beginning, Morgan said quietly. I thought about the emergency beacon, the one that had activated at 0447 in the morning, sending a signal dated 1996. If the station was stuck in a loop, repeating the same day over and over, then maybe that beacon was the starting point, the moment it all began. But how could a location be trapped in time? It violated every law of physics I knew. Time didn't loop, it moved forward, linear and irreversible. You couldn't step into the same moment twice, except here somehow you could. I started checking the other terminals, looking for any file I could access without credentials. Most were locked, but one machine had a public shared drive containing maintenance logs and supply manifests. I pulled up the most recent files. They were all dated November 14, 2002. Equipment inventories, generator fuel levels, routine system checks. Everything documented in meticulous detail by agents who thought they were just doing their jobs. Agents who had no idea they were living the same day on repeat. One file caught my attention. Incident Reports NOV02.txt. I opened it. The document contained a series of reports filed by station personnel documenting unusual occurrences throughout November. November 2, 2002. Agent Keller reports hearing voices calling his name while on perimeter patrol. Investigation revealed no source, possibly wildlife or auditory hallucination due to isolation. November 5, 2002. Agent Morrison reports finding coffee mug in empty room. Mug was warm and contained fresh coffee. No explanation found. Security sweep revealed no intruders. November 8, 2002. Multiple agents report déjà vu experiences, feeling that events have happened before. Station psychologist attributes this to stress and recommends mandatory counseling sessions. November 11, 2002. Communications equipment malfunction. All clocks showing incorrect dates. Technician unable to determine cause. Systems reset. Problem persists. November 14, 2002. Agent Morrison reports seeing duplicate of himself in the woods. Duplicate spoke and moved like Morrison, but claimed to be from a different time. Psych evaluation scheduled. Update. 3 other agents report similar experiences. Emergency meeting called for 2,000 hours. The last entry was logged at 16:47 hours. After that, nothing. They knew, I said. They knew something was wrong. They were experiencing the same things we are, the duplicates, the time anomalies, all of it. What happened to them? Morgan asked. I minimized the text file and checked the directory for other documents. There were dozens. Personnel files, mission reports, technical specifications for the equipment. But one folder made my hands go cold. Video surveillance. The station had security cameras, I said. We found them mounted in the corners of the main room, small and unobtrusive. They were still active, tiny red lights blinking steadily. And if they were active, that meant they'd been recording. I navigated to the surveillance folder and found hundreds of files, all dated November 14, 2002. Each one was time-stamped, 6-hour blocks covering the entire day. I opened the first one. CM row 1 Zorro Sos 06 Onguard. The video player loaded. Black and white footage, slightly grainy, showing the main common area in the early morning hours. Empty. Nothing moving except occasional shadows from the lamps. I fast-forwarded. At 04:47 a.m. something changed. The lights in the station flickered. Once, twice, then steadied. And in that moment, as the lights stabilized, I saw something appear in the center of the room. A figure. just standing there motionless. It hadn't walked in, it had simply materialized, as if it had always been there but the camera only just noticed. The figure was wrong. Its proportions were off, its posture too rigid, and it had no face. For maybe 30 seconds, the figure stood completely still. Then it tilted its head, as if listening to something, and then it began to move. Not walking, but gliding, as if its feet weren't quite touching the floor. It moved through the room, pausing at doorways, looking into offices, searching for something. "What is that?" Morgan whispered. "I don't know." The figure approached one of the cameras, tilting its head up to stare directly into the lens. This close, I could see that where its face should have been there was only smooth blankness, like unfinished sculpture. No features at all. Then the video cut to black. When it resumed 10 seconds later, the figure was gone. The room was empty again. I opened the next file. KM 0106 12 morning footage. Agents moving through the station, going about their routines. 3 men and 2 women, all dressed in bureau gear, all looking professional and competent. I recognized Morrison from his personnel photo. He was making coffee in the kitchen, talking to a female agent I didn't recognize. Everything looked normal, too normal. I fast-forwarded again. At 08:15, one of the agents, a tall man with a beard, walked to the front door, opened it, and stepped outside. The camera view didn't extend beyond the doorway, but I could see him standing on the porch, looking out at the forest. He stood there for a long time, too long, maybe 5 minutes without moving. Then he turned around and walked back inside. But something about him had changed. His movements were slightly off, mechanical, like he was consciously thinking about each step instead of walking naturally. The other agents didn't seem to notice. "Play it back," Morgan said, "when he walks out." I rewound the footage and played it at normal speed. The bearded agent walked to the door, opened it, stepped out. From this angle, I couldn't see what he was looking at in the forest, but I could see his face. His expression changed, from curiosity to confusion to fear. And then, just before he turned to come back inside, to something else. Something blank, empty, like someone had reached into his head and turned something off. "It got him," Morgan said. "Whatever's out there, it got him." I continued through the files. The footage showed the agents going about their day, seemingly unaware that anything was wrong. But if you watched closely, you could see the changes. Little inconsistencies. Agents appearing in rooms they hadn't walked into. Conversations that looped. The same exchange happening twice within an hour. Objects moving when no one was near them. And periodically, in the background, just visible at the edge of the frame, I'd see that faceless figure. Watching. Always watching. At 16:47, the footage showed Morrison sitting at this very terminal, typing a log entry. The entry I'd read earlier. Generator failure. Emergency power activated. Investigating source of... Morrison stopped typing mid-word. He sat very still, staring at the screen. Then he turned slowly to look at the camera, his eyes wide. He mouthed something. I couldn't hear it. The surveillance had no audio, but I could read his lips. "It's happening again." Then the power went out, and the footage ended. The next file was labeled KM0117/2300, but it wouldn't open. Corrupted data, or deliberately deleted, or something else. All the files after 1647 hours were inaccessible. "We're missing the end," I said. "Whatever happened after Morrison wrote that log entry, it's not here." "Or it's happening now," Morgan said. "Think about it. We arrived yesterday morning. The station was empty. but there was fresh coffee. Then we left, came back, and saw figures in the windows. Just like the surveillance showed, people appearing and disappearing. You think we're in the footage? That we're part of the loop? I don't know. But something trapped those agents in November 14th, 2002. And now we're here experiencing the same anomalies, seeing the same things they saw. What if the station doesn't just replay that day? What if it pulls people into it? I looked at my watch. The date display was glitching, cycling between November 15th, 2014 and November 14th, 2002. We need to get out before the countdown reaches 0, I said, before whatever happened to those agents happens to us. We gathered what evidence we could, copied files to my camera's memory card, photographed the surveillance screens, documented everything. Then we headed for the door. It wouldn't open. Morgan tried the handle, locked. She tried harder, throwing her weight against it. The door didn't budge. Window, I said. We moved to the nearest window and tried to open it. Also locked, or sealed, or something. The latch wouldn't move, and the glass was reinforced, the kind that wouldn't break easily. Other exits, Morgan said. We ran through the station, trying every door and window. All locked, all sealed. The building had become a cage. This is wrong, Morgan said, her voice rising. Doors don't just lock themselves. Someone's doing this. Or something, the station itself. We made our way back to the communications room. The terminal showed the countdown, 04:23:51. 4 hours and change until the loop reset. Until November 14th started over again. And we were trapped inside. I tried the front door again, this time using my gun to shoot out the lock. The bullet hit metal and ricocheted, embedding itself in the wall 3 feet from my head. The door remained closed. Doesn't matter, Morgan said. Even if we get out of the building, we're still inside the station's influence. The loop extends beyond these walls. She was right. Whatever was wrong with Whitaker Station, it wasn't confined to the buildings. The forest, the clearing, maybe miles of surrounding territory, all of it was caught in the same temporal trap. So what do we do? I asked. We figure out what happened on November 14th, 2002. We find out why the loop started, and maybe we can break it. I pulled up the incident reports again, reading through them more carefully. The pattern was clear. Starting in early November, the agents had begun experiencing anomalies. Time distortions, duplicates, spatial inconsistencies. The kind of things we were experiencing now. But something had triggered it. Something had made November 14th the day that repeated forever. I opened the personnel files, looking for anything that might explain what the agents were investigating. Most of it was routine. Missing persons cases, wilderness search and rescue, liaison work with remote communities. But one file was marked classified, eyes only. I opened it. Project designation. Mirror Lake classification level. 4 investigating agents. Morrison, Keller, Rodriguez subject. Anomalous temporal readings detected at Mirror Lake, approximately 8 miles northwest of Whitaker Station. Briefing. Local trappers report unusual phenomena at Mirror Lake, including spatial distortions, missing time, and encounters with duplicate persons. Geological survey indicates presence of unknown mineral deposits with unusual electromagnetic properties. Recommend investigation and containment if threat level determined to be significant. Status: active investigation as of November 1st, 2002. I showed Morgan. Mirror Lake. That's what they were investigating. You think that's the source? The lake? Has to be. Unknown minerals, electromagnetic properties, temporal anomalies. Everything we're experiencing now, the trappers reported years earlier. The station was built here to investigate Mirror Lake, and somehow it got caught in whatever effect the lake generates. Morgan pulled out a map of the area. Mirror Lake is 8 miles northwest. If we could get there, maybe we could find out what's causing this. Or we'd walk right into the source and get even more trapped than we already are. Do we have another choice? I looked at the countdown. 03:54:17. Less than 4 hours until something happened. Reset, recurrence, or something worse. And we had no way out except forward. We need supplies, I said. Cold weather gear, emergency rations, weapons. If we're going to hike 8 miles through the wilderness to a potentially lethal anomaly, we might as well be prepared. We raided the station's storage room, taking everything we could carry. As I was loading my pack, I heard something from upstairs. Footsteps. Multiple people walking around. "The agents are back," Morgan whispered. We moved to the bottom of the stairs and looked up. Through the second-floor hallway, I could see shadows moving. 3 figures, maybe 4, walking from room to room. Then one of them appeared at the top of the stairs. It was Morrison, or something that looked like Morrison. He stood there, looking down at us with an expression I couldn't read. "You shouldn't be here," he said. "Neither should you," I replied. "You've been dead for 12 years. He tilted his head. "I died?" The station was closed in 2002. Everyone was evacuated. "No." He shook his head slowly. "I'm still here. We're all still here. We never left." Another figure appeared behind him. A woman, maybe 30, with short dark hair. "He's right," she said. "We've been here the whole time. Waiting." "Waiting for what?" Morgan asked. "For someone to fix it, to break the loop." Morrison started down the stairs. "We're stuck. Every day is November 14th. We wake up, do our routines, and then it resets, over and over, for years. We need help." He reached the bottom of the stairs and extended his hand. "Come with us. We'll show you." I didn't take his hand. "Show us what?" "The recordings, the ones after 1647 hours. We saved them. You need to see what happened." Morgan and I exchanged looks. This could be a trap. These figures could be the same faceless things we'd seen in the surveillance footage, wearing human faces to lure us deeper into whatever had consumed the station. But they could also be the real agents, or what was left of them, genuinely trapped and desperate for help. "Show us," I said. Morrison led us back to the communications room. The other agents followed. There were 4 of them total, all wearing bureau gear from 12 years ago. They moved stiffly, like people who'd been sitting still for too long, but their eyes were alert, aware, human. Morrison sat at the terminal and entered a password. The system beeped, access granted, and he navigated to a hidden folder I hadn't seen before. "After the power went out at 1647 hours, we managed to restart the backup systems," he explained. "We documented everything that happened next. But when the loop reset, these files were hidden, protected by encryption so they wouldn't be erased. We've been waiting for someone from outside to find them." He opened a video file. "CAM 01-17-0-23-34. The footage showed the station in darkness, lit only by emergency lighting. The timestamp read 1700 hours, 13 minutes after Morrison's last log entry. The agents were gathered in the common area, 5 of them, clearly scared. Morrison was talking, gesturing emphatically while the others listened. No audio, but I could read the body language. They knew something was wrong. At 17:23 hours, the front door opened. No one had approached it. No one had touched the handle. It simply opened as if inviting something inside. The agents backed away, weapons drawn. For maybe 30 seconds, nothing happened. Then a figure appeared in the doorway. It was the faceless thing from the earlier footage. But now there were more of them. 3, 4, 5 figures, all identical, all featureless. Flowing into the station like water, the agents opened fire. I could see muzzle flashes, could imagine the deafening sound of gunfire in that enclosed space. But the bullets had no effect. They passed through the figures as if through smoke. The figures spread out, moving toward the agents with that same gliding motion. When they got close, they reached out with the hands that seemed too long, fingers that bent wrong. One of the agents, the bearded man I'd seen in the earlier footage, was touched by one of the figures. He froze. His expression went blank. And when the figure withdrew its hand, the agent moved differently. Mechanical. Wrong. One by one, the figures touched each agent. One by one, the agents changed. All except Morrison. He'd backed into the communications room, sealed the door, and was frantically typing at the terminal. Through the window in the door, I could see the figures pressing against the glass, reaching for him. The timestamp reached 23:34 hours. 11:34 p.m., the exact moment the countdown was approaching. On screen, Morrison finished typing and pressed enter. The terminal flashed, code scrolling across the screen. Then everything in the station, lights, computers, equipment, shut down completely. Total darkness. When the emergency lights came back on seconds later, the figures were gone. The agents were still there, but different. They moved in perfect synchronization, like puppets on strings. And Morrison was slumped over the keyboard, not moving. The footage continued until midnight, then looped back to 00 hours. November 14th, starting over. That's what happened, the present, Morrison said quietly. I tried to shut down the station, cut the power, break whatever connection those things were using. But I couldn't stop it. I only delayed it, trapped it in a loop. The countdown, I said. When it reaches 0, that's when the figures come back, when they try to finish what they started. Yes, every cycle, at 23:34 hours, they return. And every cycle we have to hide. Wait it out, hope we don't get touched. But it's getting worse. Each loop, they're stronger, faster. Soon, they won't need to wait for the countdown. They'll be here all the time. What are they? Morgan asked. Morrison shook his head. We don't know. We thought they might be connected to Mirror Lake, to whatever mineral deposits or anomaly exists there. But we never got a chance to investigate further. The loop started before we could finish our research. I looked at the countdown. 02:15:33, 2 hours. Then the cycle would reset, and those things would return. The lake, I said. If that's the source, maybe we can shut it down. End the loop permanently. We've tried, one of the other agents said, the woman with short hair. Every cycle, we try to reach the lake, but we never make it. The forest changes, paths that should exist disappear. Time stretches or compresses. 8 miles becomes 80. We always end up back here, just in time for the reset. Because you're part of the loop, Morgan said. You can't break free because you're trapped inside it. But we're not. We came from outside. Then, maybe you can succeed where we failed. Morrison pulled up a map on the screen. Mirror Lake is here. There's an old trapper's trail that should get you there in under 3 hours if you move fast. But you need to understand, if you go there, you might not come back. Whatever's at that lake, it's powerful enough to create this. He gestured at the station around us. Powerful enough to trap us for 12 years. If we don't go, we're trapped anyway, I said. When that countdown reaches 0, those things come back. And I don't want to be here when they do. Morrison nodded slowly. Then take this. He handed me a USB drive. Everything we learned about Mirror Lake is on here. Research notes, geological surveys, temporal readings. Maybe you can find something we missed. We loaded our packs and prepared to leave. As we headed for the door, which now opened easily, as if the station was letting us go, Morrison called out, "Agent Tate?" I turned. "When you break the loop, if you break it, what happens to us?" I didn't have an answer. If we shut down whatever was at Mirror Lake, would it free the agents? Or would they simply cease to exist? Temporal echoes fading into nothing. "I don't know," I said honestly. He smiled sadly. "Neither do we, but anything's better than this. Living the same day forever, waiting for midnight, hiding from things that shouldn't exist." He extended his hand. "Good luck." I shook it. His hand was cold, but solid, real. "Stay hidden until 2334, I said. "We'll end this. We know you will. We've seen you do it." "What?" But Morrison just smiled. "You'll understand when you reach the lake." Then the door closed between us, and Morgan and I were standing outside in the cold November air, with less than 2 hours to hike 8 miles through the wilderness and somehow stop a temporal anomaly that had trapped an entire station in an endless loop. "No pressure," Morgan muttered. We started running. The trail Morrison had marked on the map was barely visible, more suggestion than path. We followed it northwest, pushing through dense undergrowth and over fallen logs, our breath coming in white clouds. The forest seemed darker here, the trees more tightly packed, and I had the constant sensation of being watched. "How long?" Morgan asked. I checked my watch, 20:47. "Hour and 47 minutes until the reset. We need to move faster." We broke into a run, abandoning caution for speed. Branches whipped at our faces. Snow soaked through our boots. My ankle, the one I'd hurt jumping from the window, throbbed with each step, but I ignored it. We had to reach the lake before midnight. After maybe 40 minutes of running, Morgan grabbed my arm. "Wait, look." We'd reached a clearing, and at the far end, through the trees, I could see water, a lake, its surface perfectly still despite the wind, reflecting the overcast sky like dark glass, Mirror Lake. But something was wrong with the distance. The lake looked close, maybe 100 yards, but as we walked toward it, the distance didn't decrease. We walked for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, and the lake remained the same tantalizing distance away. "It's the temporal distortion," I said. "Space is compressing or expanding. We're not getting closer because distance doesn't work normally here. Then how do we reach it?" I thought about what Morrison had said. When you break the loop, if you break it, we've seen you do it. They'd seen us do it. Past tense, as if it had already happened. What if the loop didn't just trap the station in November 14th, 2002? What if it trapped everything, past, present, future, in the same recursive moment? Time folding back on itself. Cause and effect becoming meaningless. If that was true, then we weren't trying to reach the lake. We had already reached it. We just needed to find the moment when we had. "Close your eyes," I told Morgan. "What?" "Just do it. Don't look at the lake. Don't think about the distance. Just walk forward." She looked at me like I was insane, but closed her eyes. I did the same. Then we walked, trusting our feet to find the path, refusing to measure the distance. I counted steps, 50, 100, 200. When I opened my eyes, we were standing at the edge of Mirror Lake. The water was perfectly still, perfectly clear. I could see straight to the bottom, maybe 30 feet down, where something rested on the lake bed. Something white and crystalline, roughly the size of a car, pulsing with faint light. "What is that?" Morgan whispered. I thought about the samples from Grafton Ridge, the white stones with their impossible properties. This looked similar but massive, like a meteor or a chunk of crystal that had fallen from somewhere it shouldn't exist. And it was alive. Not biological life, something else. The pulse of light wasn't random. It had rhythm, pattern, like a heartbeat or a signal. And with each pulse I felt something change in the air around us. Time itself flexing, compressing, expanding with each beat. "That's the source," I said. "That's what's generating the loop." "How do we stop it?" I had no idea. You couldn't shoot time, couldn't arrest it or contain it, and I suspected that getting close to that thing in the lake would trap us the same way it had trapped the station. But Morrison had said we would break the loop, had said he'd seen us do it, which meant there was a way even if I couldn't see it yet. I pulled out the USB drive Morrison had given me and plugged it into my tablet. The files loaded: research notes, temporal readings, geological surveys. Most of it was beyond my understanding, complex physics and theoretical mathematics. But one document caught my eye: Mirror Lake Final Analysis. XD. Opened it. The crystalline structure at the lake bottom is generating a localized temporal field approximately 10 miles in diameter. Initial readings suggest the field creates a stable time loop, with all events within its radius recurring indefinitely. The loop appears to have begun on November 14, 2002, at 00012 hours, though the exact trigger mechanism remains unknown. Attempts to remove or destroy the crystal have failed. The structure exists in superposition, present in multiple timelines simultaneously. Any action taken against it in one timeline is instantly negated in another. However, analysis of the crystal's pulse pattern reveals a potential vulnerability. The field operates on a specific frequency, 14.02 Hz. If this frequency could be disrupted, introduced to a conflicting signal of equal amplitude, the temporal loop might destabilize. Recommendation: deploy electromagnetic pulse at precisely 2334 SOI, the moment the loop resets, at a frequency of exactly 14.2 Hz. This may create destructive interference, collapsing the temporal field. Equipment required: EMP generator, frequency modulator, precise timing mechanism. Status: unable to test. Loop prevents acquisition of necessary equipment. Recommend future investigation team bring appropriate tools. I read it twice, then showed Morgan. They figured it out. The agents knew how to break the loop. They just couldn't do it themselves because they were trapped inside. Do we have an EMP generator? No, but I thought about the station, the generator that ran without fuel, the computers locked in time, the emergency beacon. All of it powered by something that shouldn't work. The station itself is generating electromagnetic pulses, I said. That's how the loop maintains itself. It's constantly broadcasting the same signal, reinforcing the same moment. If we could reverse it, use the station's own power against the loop. How? I checked the countdown on my watch. 00:42:18. 42 minutes until midnight, until the reset. We go back, I said, back to the station. We use the equipment there to generate a counterpulse at exactly 23:04 hours. Destructive interference collapses the field, the loop breaks, and everyone goes free. That's insane. You have a better idea? She didn't. We ran back through the forest. This time, the distance worked normally, or as normally as anything did in this place. 10 minutes of hard running brought us to the edge of the clearing where Whitaker Station sat, lights glowing in the windows. My watch showed 23:15, 19 minutes. We burst through the front door. The agents were gathered in the common area, exactly where the surveillance footage had shown them. Morrison looked up as we entered. "You're back. We need your help, now. Is there any equipment in this station that can generate a 14.02 Hz electromagnetic pulse?" Morrison thought for a moment. "The emergency beacon. It operates on multiple frequencies, including extremely low frequency bands for long-range transmission. With the right modification, we could tune it to 14.2 Hz. Can you do it in 19 minutes? "I can try." We ran to the communications tower. Morrison pulled open the equipment panels and started rewiring the beacon while I held a flashlight and read him instructions from the research notes. Morgan kept watch, her weapon drawn, eyes scanning the darkness beyond the windows. 23:20. "Almost there," Morrison said, his fingers flying over the circuit board. "But I need a stable power source. The backup batteries won't provide enough amplitude. Use the main generator. If I route that much power through the beacon, it'll overload. Might explode. Better than staying trapped forever." He nodded and started running cables from the generator shed. The other agents helped, moving with desperate efficiency. They'd been waiting 12 years for this moment. 23 years, same? 23:28. Morrison made the final connection. "Ready. On your mark, activate the beacon at exactly 20:34 hours. The pulse should propagate through the temporal field, creating the interference pattern we need." Should? This is theoretical physics operating at the edge of known science. Should is the best I can offer. Fair enough. We gathered in the communications room. Through the windows I could see the forest had gone still. No wind, no movement. Even the falling snow had stopped mid-air, frozen in place. Time itself was holding its breath. 23:32. Morrison's hands were shaking. "Whatever happens, thank you. For trying. We're not done yet." 3:33. Morgan gripped my arm. "Tate, look." Through the window, figures were emerging from the forest. Dozens of them, hundreds, all faceless, all identical, converging on the station with that same gliding motion. They were early. "They know what we're trying to do," Morrison said. "They're going to stop us." The figures reached the building and began pressing against the walls, the windows, the doors. I could hear them now. Not sounds exactly, but something felt through bones and teeth. A frequency just below hearing, vibrating in my skull. They were trying to get in. 23:34 twag. "Now!" I shouted. Morrison slammed his hand on the beacon activation switch. The equipment shrieked, a sound like metal tearing. Every light in the station went out. The generator roared, overloading, pumping massive amounts of power through cables never designed for such current. Outside, the figures froze. Then the windows exploded inward, glass spraying across the room. The walls cracked, the floor buckled. And through it all, that shriek continued, rising in pitch and volume until I thought my eardrums would burst. Morgan was screaming something, but I couldn't hear over the noise. Morrison had collapsed, blood running from his ears. The other agents were on the ground, hands over their heads, and the figures were inside. They moved toward us, dozens of them, reaching out with those impossible hands. One grabbed my arm, and I felt cold spread through my body. Not temperature cold, the absence of something. The absence of time, of forward motion, of change. I was being erased. With my free hand, I reached for Morrison's terminal and pressed the emergency shutdown. The entire station went dark. The generator died. The beacon stopped broadcasting. Silence. Complete and absolute silence. Then, somewhere in that silence, I heard something crack. Not a sound, a feeling. Like ice breaking on a frozen lake, like reality itself fracturing. The figures evaporated, not disappeared. Evaporated, like water under sudden heat. They came apart into nothing, their forms dissolving into the air, and the station began to change. The walls aged a dozen years in seconds. Paint peeled, dust accumulated, equipment corroded. Everything that had been preserved in the loop rushed forward, catching up to the present. The agents, too. I watched as Morrison aged, his hair graying, his face lining. The others as well, 12 years passing in moments. But they weren't dying. They were being released, pulled forward into their proper time. Then the floor gave way beneath me, and I was falling. I woke up to helicopter rotors and voices shouting over the noise. Someone was checking my pulse, securing a neck brace. I tried to sit up, but hands pushed me down gently. Don't move. You might have spinal damage. Where? You're being airlifted to Fairbanks Regional. Just stay still. I managed to turn my head enough to see outside the helicopter. Below us, Whitaker Station was collapsing. The main building's roof had caved in. One of the outbuildings was on fire, and the communications tower was bent at a 45-degree angle, like a tree broken by wind. Morgan, I said. Agent Morgan, is she? She's in the other bird. Unconscious, but stable. You both got lucky. Lucky, that was one word for it. They kept me in the hospital for 3 days. Broken ribs, concussion, severe exhaustion, frostbite on 3 fingers. Morgan had similar injuries plus a fractured collarbone. The doctor said we'd been exposed to extreme cold for an extended period, that we were lucky to be alive. They asked what happened. I told them we'd been investigating Whitaker Station when part of the structure collapsed. Emergency extraction. Simple accident. They seemed to accept that. On the 4th day, Reeves visited. He sat in the chair next to my bed, looking older and more tired than I remembered. Chavez called in an emergency extraction request, he said without preamble. Said you'd activated your distress beacon 3 days after she'd dropped you off. When the rescue team arrived, they found both of you unconscious in the wreckage of the station. Want to tell me what really happened? It's in my report. I read your report. Structural collapse due to decades of deferred maintenance. But that doesn't explain why every piece of electronic equipment in that station was fried, or why the generator was still running despite having no fuel, or why we found 5 sets of personal effects from agents who've been officially missing for 12 years. I said nothing. The site's being cleared, Reeves continued. Complete teardown, environmental remediation, the works. We're saying it's contaminated with hazardous materials from old equipment. The area's being sealed, no further access permitted. And the agents, Morrison, Keller, the others? Reeves pulled out a folder. According to updated records, all 5 agents stationed at Whitaker in 2002 resigned their positions and left the Bureau in March of that year. No forwarding addresses, no pension claims, just gone. That's not what happened. That's the official record. He fixed me with a hard look. Whatever you think you saw up there, whatever you experienced, it stays between us. The investigation into Whitaker Station is closed. Case file sealed. As far as the Bureau is concerned, you and Morgan went up there, found an abandoned facility in dangerous condition, and nearly died when it collapsed. Nothing more. And if I tell the truth, then you'll be in psychiatric evaluation by end of week, and your career will be over by end of month. Is that what you want? I thought about those agents. Morrison and the others, trapped in the same day for 12 years, waiting for someone to free them. If I told the truth, their sacrifice would be dismissed as delusion or fabrication. They'd be footnotes in a file marked mental health episode. No, I said quietly. That's not what I want. Reeves nodded. Good, then we're clear. He stood to leave, then paused at the door. For what it's worth, Tate, I believe you saw something up there. Alaska's full of places that don't make sense, phenomena we can't explain. The Bureau's policy is to document, contain, and classify, not to understand. Why not? Because some things aren't meant to be understood, they're meant to be avoided. He left. Morgan was discharged 2 days after me. We met in the parking lot of the Anchorage field office, neither of us quite ready to go back inside. You read Reeves' closure report? She asked. Yeah. It's bullshit. Complete bullshit, I agreed. But it's the bullshit we're stuck with. She looked at the building, at the windows reflecting afternoon light. Do you think they're okay? The agents? I don't know. They aged 12 years in seconds. They were released from the loop, but to when? 2002? 2014? Somewhere in between. Maybe they're everywhere. Every time. Maybe breaking the loop scattered them across all the years they missed. It was as good a theory as any. I keep thinking about what Morrison said, Morgan continued. That they'd seen us break the loop. Past tense. As if it had already happened before we did it. Closed time-like curve. Effect preceding cause. Is that even possible? After what we saw, I have no idea what's possible anymore. We stood in silence for a long moment. Finally, Morgan spoke again, her voice quiet. I've been assigned to a new case, Fairbanks field office. They need someone with remote experience. You taking it? Yeah. Getting out of Anchorage for a while sounds good. She looked at me. What about you? I've got 3 weeks medical leave. After that, I shrugged. We'll see. She extended her hand. Stay safe, Tate. You too. I watched her drive away, then stood alone in the parking lot as the sun set behind the Chugach Mountains. Alaska's winters were long and dark, the kind of dark that made you forget what daylight looked like. I went home. Small apartment, minimal furniture, the temporary living space of someone who'd never quite settled in. I poured a drink and sat by the window, watching the city lights come on one by one. My phone rang around 9 p.m., blocked number. Agent Tate? The voice was familiar, but I couldn't place it. Yes, who's this? It's Morrison. I almost dropped the phone. That's not possible. You were trapped in a time loop for 12 years? Yeah, I remember. And I remember you breaking it. Thank you, by the way. Where are you? Seattle. I've been here since... He paused. Since March 2002, when the station closed. That doesn't make sense. You were at Whitaker in November. I know, paradox, right? The loop trapped one version of me, but another version left before the loop began. Both are true. Both happened. Time doesn't have to make sense when it folds back on itself. I didn't know what to say. Listen, Morrison continued. I'm calling to warn you. The station's gone, but the lake is still there. Whatever that thing is at the bottom, it's still active. We disrupted the loop, but we didn't destroy the source. Then what happened? Why isn't it creating new loops? I think... He hesitated. I think it's waiting, regenerating. The pulse we generated damaged it, but didn't destroy it. Give it time, years, decades, maybe centuries. And it'll be back. And when it comes back, it'll be stronger. So, what do? We watch. We wait. We make sure no one goes near Mirror Lake, and if the anomalies start again... He trailed off. If they start again, we do what we did before. We break the loop, as many times as it takes. Morrison, I don't understand. How are you even alive? How are any of you alive? Honestly, I don't know. Maybe the loop preserved us. Maybe by breaking it, you pulled us back into linear time. Or maybe... He laughed, but it sounded hollow. Maybe we're not alive at all. Maybe we're just echoes. Temporal after-images that think they're real. That's... impossible? Yeah. So was everything else we saw. I heard voices in the background on his end. Someone calling his name. "I have to go," Morrison said. "But Tate? Thank you. Whatever we are now, it's better than being trapped. Remember that." The line went dead. I tried calling back. The number didn't exist. For weeks after, I tried to find Morrison. Checked bureau databases, Seattle field office records, anything that might confirm he was real. I found nothing. No Agent Morrison matching his description. No Seattle address. No phone records. He'd either never existed, or he existed in a way I couldn't prove. 6 months later, on a routine assignment near Fairbanks, I asked a local ranger about Mirror Lake. He looked at me oddly. "Mirror Lake? There's no lake by that name up here." "Northwest of the old Whitaker Station site." "Oh, you mean Echo Lake." "Yeah, that's out there. Nobody goes there, though. Place gives folks the creeps." "Why Echo Lake?" "Because sounds echo strange there. People hear their own voices calling to them from across the water. Hunters avoid it. Trappers won't go near it." I didn't correct him on the name. Maybe it changed. Maybe it had always been Echo Lake and Morrison's reports were wrong. Or maybe the lake itself was rewriting the past, erasing its own existence one memory at a time. I never went back, neither did Morgan. We kept in touch for a while, emails, occasional phone calls, but gradually drifted apart. Last I heard, she'd left the Bureau entirely, teaching criminology at a university in Oregon, building a normal life far from Alaska's anomalies. Smart woman, I stayed, finished my 20 years, took retirement, bought a cabin near Anchorage. I tell people I stayed because I love Alaska, because there's nowhere else like it. And that's true as far as it goes. But the real reason is simpler. Someone has to watch. Someone has to remember what happened at Whitaker Station. Someone has to make sure that when the loops start again, and they will start again, there's someone who knows how to break them. That someone is me. Every November 14th, I drive north. Not all the way to Mirror Lake. I'm not that stupid, but close enough. Close enough to feel if something changes. Close enough to hear if the whispers start. So far, nothing. But I keep watching, keep waiting. Because Morrison was right. Time doesn't have to make sense when it folds back on itself. Cause and effect become suggestions. Past and future blur into maybe and might have been. And somewhere in that blur, in the space between one moment and the next, Whitaker Station still exists. Not in our present, but in every November 14th that ever was or ever will be. An eternal moment, preserved forever. And in that moment, 5 agents still walk the same halls, pour the same coffee, write the same logs. Still waiting for someone to notice. Still hoping for rescue. I tried to save them once. Maybe I succeeded. Maybe I failed. Maybe success and failure are the same thing when time loops back on itself. All I know is this. Some nights, when I'm trying to sleep, I hear my own voice calling from the darkness. "Come back to the station. We need you. It's happening again." And I lie there, eyes open, listening to the echo of a voice that might be mine, might be someone else's, might be nothing at all. Wondering when, not if when, I'll have to go back. Because loops don't end. They just pause. And the pause is almost over. The dead don't always stay buried in Alaska. 6 years ago, FBI agent James Keller disappeared while investigating disappearances linked to Aurora activity. His camp was found intact, but he was gone. No tracks, no body, just his GPS tracker on the ground, battery dead, until 3 days ago, when it started transmitting again. Special Agent in Charge Delgado met me at Fairbanks Airport. "Keller's tracker is active," she said in the car. "Moving south, walking patterns. Someone or something is carrying it toward the Dalton Highway. Impossible. The battery should be dead, I know." She showed me the telemetry data. The tracker had been moving for 3 days, consistent with human hiking patterns. "We need you to intercept it." At the mobile command unit, Porter showed me the signal on his monitors. 2 miles per hour heading straight for our position. Should arrive at dawn. I studied the case file. Keller had been investigating 17 disappearances, all during periods of strong Aurora activity. His final report mentioned witnesses seeing people who aren't people, figures with wrong proportions, calling to them in familiar voices. 3 days after filing that report, Keller went into the field. Never came back. We spent the day preparing. As night fell, early at 4 p.m. in February, the temperature dropped to -20. We took shifts monitoring the signal. Around 3 a.m., Porter called me. Signal's accelerating, was 2 miles per hour, now 7, 10, 15. On screen, the GPS marker raced south at impossible speed through roadless terrain. Then it stopped, 2 miles from our position. "Sprint, then stop," Leo suggested. "Like it's fleeing something." Porter frowned. "I'm getting a secondary signal, same frequency, half a mile east of the first. 2 trackers? Or 1 tracker in 2 places?" I made the decision. "Briggs, we're going in, now, before it moves again." We drove until the terrain stopped us, then continued on foot through dense forest. At 500 yards, Briggs grabbed my arm. "Listen." Breathing. Human breathing, deep and steady, but too loud. As if someone stood right beside us. I swept my flashlight. Nothing. The breathing continued, coming from everywhere. At 200 yards, my GPS started glitching. Coordinates jumped randomly. Radio went to static. Then I heard my name, Harrington. From the forest, not the radio. I saw it at the edge of my flashlight beam, a figure between trees, maybe 50 yards ahead. Tall, wrong proportions, arms too long. "FBI, identify yourself." The figure tilted its head. Then it turned and vanished into darkness with impossible speed. We reached where it had stood, in the snow. Footprints, human-shaped but elongated, and half buried beside them, something metallic. Keller's GPS tracker. Active, transmitting, with his name scratched on the back. J. Keller, 2008. I followed the footprints northwest. After 200 yards, they stopped, just ended mid-stride. On the ground, another GPS tracker, identical. Same name, also active. I held both devices. They showed different coordinates. One said we were here, the other placed us half a mile east. "This is wrong," Briggs said. "We need to leave." Ahead, through the trees. Lights, not flashlights. Green and blue ribbons shimmering in the sky. Aurora, but too low, too bright. And beneath the light stood the figure, looking up. From this angle I could see. The spine curved wrong, shoulders too high, and where the head should be, something that reflected aurora light like glass. "Briggs, back away slowly." But Briggs was frozen, staring. "Do you see them? The others. They're everywhere." I looked. The shadows between trees had shape. Dozens of figures, maybe hundreds, standing throughout the forest. All watching us. The figure in the clearing turned. Where its face should have been, nothing. Just smooth blankness. Then it spoke in my voice. "Federal agents, everyone stay where you are." My words, my inflection, perfect replication. "They're learning," Briggs whispered. "They're learning us." We ran. Footsteps followed us, steady, inevitable. We reached the SUV and drove back. I checked the mirror. At the road's edge, the figure. And beside it, dozens more, all watching. We reached the mobile unit at 0437. Porter rushed out. "You were gone 4 hours." 4 hours? I checked my watch. 0437. We'd left at 0300. "We were only gone an hour." "You left at midnight, Harrington." Briggs sat in the snow, staring. "Time doesn't work right out there. They take the time." While Lou treated Briggs, I showed Porter both GPS trackers. Same ID codes, but look at the timestamps. One showed February 11th, 2014. The other, February 8th, 2008. 6 years ago. The day Keller disappeared. "This one's been running for 6 years, Porter said. "Never updated, stuck in 2008. Delgado authorized one final mission into what they called the Aurora Anomaly Zone. Dr. Rebecca Strand, a geophysicist, would accompany me. "The zone is a tear in space-time," Strand explained, "held open by geomagnetic forces. Something on the other side is trying to come through. The figures aren't entities, they're projections from alternate timelines. And if Keller's been there 6 years, there's nothing left we'd recognize as human. But his GPS is still transmitting, moving. Which suggests whatever he became still follows some vestige of programming, coming home, or bringing something back with him. 2 hours later, we boarded the helicopter. The pilot set us down at the zone's southern boundary at 1443 hours. He'd return in 24 hours. If we weren't there, he'd wait 30 minutes, then leave. Strand activated her generator as we unloaded, a 20-meter protective bubble. 12 hours of battery. After that, we're unprotected. We headed north toward Keller's last coordinates. The forest was too quiet. No birds, no wind. Above us, the aurora began shimmering. Too low, too bright. At 1612, my GPS malfunctioned, coordinates jumping wildly. "We're entering the distortion field," Strand said. Shadows fell at wrong angles. Distances compressed. A tree seemed to exist in 2 places at once. Then, footprints crossed our path. Human, but impossible. Stride varying from 5 to 15 feet. Depth inconsistent. "Made by something only partially in our reality," Strand said. "Phasing between here and somewhere else." The tracks led to a clearing. At the center, a backpack from the missing search team. Inside, a journal. Final entries in shaky handwriting. Feb. 10, 1847. Martinez walked into the Aurora. Now there are 5 Martinez, all real, all him. Feb. 11, UO 300. I'm splitting, becoming multiple versions. This version is writing. Another is running. Another is already dead. They're all me. Last entry, pen tearing the paper. Run. Quantum superposition, Strand whispered. Multiple realities collapsed into the same space. The figures aren't aliens. They're us. Versions from timelines that shouldn't exist. We found the search team member who wrote the journal. Dead in the snow. Peaceful. No rigor mortis, despite being missing 2 days. His jacket was from the 1970s. His badge showed a different name. Layered timelines, Strand said. His death in one, his life in another. All real. Above, the aurora pulsed. Deep vibrations I felt in my bones. At 1812, we reached the coordinates. In the clearing stood Agent James Keller, or something wearing his shape. Too perfect. Eyes reflecting aurora light with impossible colors. "Agent Harrington," he said flatly. "I know many things. I have walked through 6 years in 6 seconds. I have become something else. What happened to you?" The aurora touched me, showed me the truth. There is no single timeline. Everything that can happen does happen. I am all of those branches, all of those Kellers, and I'm coming home. Strand checked her instruments. "He's oscillating between hundreds of possible states. He's not one person anymore." Keller smiled, too wide, too many teeth. "I've been waiting. Knew you would come. Saw it happen 1,000 times, in 1,000 different ways." His form flickered. Keller old, Keller young, Keller dead, Keller inhuman, all real, all him. "Come with me," he said. "I can show you. The aurora can touch you too. You can become infinite." "That's not infinite," Strand said. "That's fragmented. You've been shattered across multiple timelines." "The barrier is thinning," Keller said, looking at the aurora. "Soon, all impossible timelines will collapse into this one. The world will fracture into infinite versions, all existing simultaneously." Strand grabbed my arm. "We need to leave. The flux is too high. We're starting to desynchronize." I felt it, a pulling sensation, being stretched thin. At the edges of vision, other versions of myself. Different positions, different weapons, different choices. All real, all happening now. "You can't escape," Keller said. "You're already fracturing." I looked at my hand. It held my weapon. It was empty. It reached toward Keller, all simultaneously true. "Fight it!" Strand shouted. "Focus on one choice." I concentrated, chose, turned, and ran. Behind me, Keller's laughter. Dozens of overlapping voices. "You can't run from yourself." The forest blurred, trees and aurora bleeding together. I felt myself splitting with each step, but I forced one timeline, one path. Strand was ahead, her generator pushing distortions back. I reached the protective field, the world solidified. "Keep moving, generators failing." 20 minutes before, behind us, something emerged from the aurora. Massive, 15 feet tall, human-shaped but wrong. Where its face should be, a window into swirling timelines that never were. Others followed, dozens, hundreds, an army of impossible things. "The things that live between timelines," Strand gasped. "They're coming through." We ran. The things pursued, appearing and disappearing, taking shortcuts through reality. I fired. Bullets hit dozens of versions simultaneously. None stopped. The generator sputtered, died. The protective field collapsed. Immediately, I felt myself splitting again. But I chose one timeline. Grabbed Strand and kept running. We burst into the clearing where the helicopter should be. It wasn't there. We're too early, or too late, or in the wrong timeline. The things closed in. The aurora pulsed, and the world fractured. I saw every possible outcome simultaneously. Every timeline. Every version of this moment. All real. All happening. All now. I had to choose. I chose the timeline where the helicopter arrived, and because I chose it, forced that probability into reality, it became true. The helicopter appeared, descending through aurora light. "Get in, now!" We ran. The things reached out, trying to pull us into probability space. I grabbed the runner and pulled myself in, turned to help Strand. She was gone. Not taken, just not there, as if she'd never existed. "Where's the other passenger?" the pilot shouted. I stopped. Had there been? Memories were fading. "Just me," I heard myself say. "Always just me." We lifted off. Below, Keller stood in the clearing, looking up with dozens of eyes, all his versions, all his timelines. He raised his hand. Farewell, or warning, or beckoning. Then the Aurora pulsed, and he was gone. The official report was simple. Reconnaissance mission, negative contact with missing personnel, equipment malfunction confirmed, area recommended for permanent restricted status. No casualties. Fiction. But how could I write the truth? The footage from my camera showed me walking alone, talking to no one, running from nothing. Dr. Strand, if she'd ever existed, had been erased from our timeline. Or I'd imagined her. Or both were true simultaneously. 3 days later, they showed me the recovered equipment from the missing search team. 6 GPS units, 6 backpacks, all found stacked neatly in one location, as if someone had collected them and brought them back. No bodies, no blood, just equipment from people who no longer existed in our timeline. The Aurora anomaly zone was designated permanent restricted access, 50-mile radius. Official reason, environmental hazards. Real reason, classified. Briggs retired on medical disability. Last I heard, he won't acknowledge he was ever there. Maybe he found a timeline where he wasn't. I finished my career 2 years later, took a desk job in Seattle. But the Aurora Zone never left me, because I still have Keller's GPS trackers, both of them. On my desk right now, both active, both transmitting. One shows coordinates in the Aurora Zone. The other shows my current location. And sometimes, late at night, they both show the same place simultaneously, as if I'm in both locations at once, as if I never left, as if the version that came back is just one possibility. I dream about the Aurora. In those dreams, Keller tells me, it's spreading. The boundary is thinning. Soon it'll be everywhere. How long? Already happened, will happen, is happening, all true. Last week, 3 hikers disappeared near the Dalton Highway. Their GPS units were found stacked in a clearing, all still transmitting. The zone is expanding. 2 months ago, I received a package. No return address. Inside, the journal from the search team, but with more entries. Entries dated after his death. Final entry. You can't stop it. You can only choose which version of yourself survives. Choose wisely. Maybe it was me from another timeline. Maybe Keller. Maybe Strand. Maybe the Aurora itself. A warning of what's coming. The boundary is thinning. Every year, more disappearances, more impossible phenomena, more places where reality fractures. The Aurora Zone isn't an anomaly. It's a preview. Yesterday, my reflection moved half a second out of sync, as if making different choices. Living a different timeline, as if I'm already fracturing. This morning, a 3rd GPS tracker on my desk. Keller's unit. Same serial number. But this one shows coordinates that don't exist on any map. Coordinates in probability space. I check the news daily. Strange lights. Temporal anomalies. People seeing duplicates. The signs are there. The Aurora is coming south. And when it arrives, when all timelines merge, we'll all become like Keller. Fractured, existing everywhere and nowhere. Unless someone stops it. Unless... I keep those trackers on my desk. Monitor their signals. And when the Aurora is visible from Seattle, which shouldn't be possible, I watch and wonder, is this my timeline? the real one? Or am I just one possibility among infinite versions? Maybe Keller found the answer. Maybe that's why he stayed, embracing fragmentation rather than fighting it. Maybe there's freedom in existing in all states simultaneously. Or maybe he's trapped in hell, conscious in every timeline, aware of every possibility, unable to choose. I don't know, but I think about him when I see the aurora. Wonder if he's still walking between timelines, experiencing every version at once. Wonder if I'm joining him. This morning, I woke in 3 places: Seattle, Fairbanks, the Aurora Zone, all equally real. I chose Seattle, forced myself into that reality. But the choice gets harder every day. Soon I won't be able to choose at all. I'll exist everywhere. Everything. Every when. Just like Keller. The aurora is spreading. The boundary is failing. And there's nothing we can do except choose which version faces what comes next. I chose wrong once. In the zone. Left strand behind, or erased her, or watched her fragment. Sometimes I hear her voice, choose wisely. But how do you choose when all choices exist simultaneously? The GPS trackers show the same coordinates now. All 3. My current location. Which means I'm already there, in the zone, still walking. Never left. This reality, where I came back, wrote reports, retired, might be one possibility, one branch, and all the others are still happening.